Chapter 687. After Lu Hao was released, he pretended to be ill and did not attend court or entertain guests. He kept a low profile for a whole month until the news of the headless case of the imperial envoy was overshadowed by other major events. In the evening he brought a few of his close retainers to Hengwu Restaurant for a drink. Hengwu Restaurant, located in Apricot Rain Alley in the east of the city, was worthy of being the #1 music house in Enling. It was not a brothel or a brothel, but regardless of gender, the musicians and dancers in Hengwu Restaurant were all first class in appearance and talent. There were 366 songs and 388 plays. No matter popular or unpopular, they were all skilled and familiar with all of them. Den had been peaceful for 300 years. Now in the Golden Age the people of En were not good at riding and shooting. They loved to seek pleasure. A place as elegant and not boring as Hengwu Restaurant was naturally sought after. The road in Apricot Rain Alley was not wide. The path paved with bluestone could at most accommodate 2 sedan carriages side by side. Therefore, the passing carriages and horses would stop on the nearby streets and walk in. This was not a path drawn by Hengwu Restaurant for the guests. This was a place filled with high officials and nobles. No one wanted to offend someone they shouldn't offend by blocking the road. Unless you were fearless. For example, at this moment, Lu Hao's sedan was carried in from Apricot Rain Alley and stopped at the gate of Hengwu Restaurant. Little Lauer, who was at the door, recognized Ning Wang's sedan and had already run in to call his mama. When Lu Hao got off the sedan, the retainers followed. Hengwu Restaurant's Li Mama had already walked down the steps with a smile on her face. She held a blue silk handkerchief and respectfully waited. She looked at Lu Hao's expression and said, "Wang Yi is in a good mood today. Are you listening to a book or watching a play?" The mama of Hengwu Restaurant was not a madam in a brothel. She did not do the dirty work of a pimp. She was equivalent to a female shopkeeper. This Li Mama was over 30 but still had a slim figure. When she was young, she had been a female entertainer in a musical house and was skilled in all kinds of instruments. Lu Hao smiled and said, "I haven't been here for a while. Are there any new plays?" As Mother Li welcomed them inside, she replied, Yes, there's a book called Worship the Immortals that was arranged for the Mid-Autumn Festival. It's a big play, 20 to 30 actors, a total of 36 plays. There's also The Oath of Brotherhood in the Peach Garden that you like to watch. The lyrics have been changed and the pieces have been rearranged. There are also 2 or 3 plays. If you want to see something new, your servant will let them prepare it. Go. Lu Hao waved his hand and Li Mama summoned a thin and pale young man to open the way for Ning Wang and his party. Inside Hengwu Hall. It was brightly lit. As soon as he entered, he saw 2 3-story buildings. The second floor was connected by a bridge, which looked like the word work written upside down. On the door on the left hung a horizontal board with the words, End of the World of Fragrant Grass, and on the other door was, Evergreen Pine and Cypress. Standing outside the building he could hear the hustle and bustle of people. Especially the first floor of the Fragrant Grass Pavilion. There was a large stage set up and martial songs were being sung. The sound of gongs and drums filled the air and it was extraordinarily lively. When Ning Wang and his party entered the Cypress and Cypress building next door, their ears suddenly became quiet. No matter how noisy the other side was, when it came to this side, it was like they were separated by a street and they could only hear movement. It was not disturbing. The upper and lower floors of the Cypress and Cypress building were private rooms, but they were much more spacious than normal restaurants and brothels. The small ones could hold a group of musicians, and the large ones could set up an entire stage taking up half the floor. Just this half floor. It was truly a money-squandering establishment. The number of nobles who could come here to amuse themselves could be counted on 2 hands. Since Lu Hao had come, he naturally wanted to go to the top floor. The waiter leading the way pushed open the 4 doors to the hall. There were hundreds of golden cups and silver candles already lit up in the room. It was bright and extravagant. At the far west was a stage 2 zhang wide. Separated by a picture railing, there was a row of soft chairs and couches on the opposite side. When he sat down, Li Mama led a group of delicate and pretty maids in. Her hands were holding tea trays, cups, fruits and fine wine. They were placed on the table and then she waited on the side. Her actions were not frivolous at all. Li Mama handed the script on the sandalwood tray to Lu Hao. She first ordered Drunken Flower Shade. This was a short play that could be sung for the time it took to drink a cup of tea. It was to give the troupe preparing for the big play later on. The main thing was to listen to the newly written Sworn Brotherhood in the Peach Garden. In reality, it didn't matter if the first play was ordered or not ordered. After all, A short tea play in the Cypress building cost 10 taels of gold. But with Ning Wang's wealth he would not be stingy. The play quickly started on the stage. As the musicians started to play, there was more noise in the surroundings. The guests that had been slightly reserved in front of Lu Hao relaxed. Some started to talk and laugh, some supported the performance, causing Lu Hao to laugh continuously. But there was probably no one who really wanted to listen to the play. Among the many guests, there was a petty person who liked to take advantage of the opportunity. His name was Yuan Zhouzi. Whatever other people were talking about, he would add a few words and express his opinion to show how knowledgeable he was. The result of being so talkative was that he drank half a pot of tea more than the others. Before the big play started he had to pee. When he left, no one paid attention to him. He left for about 15 minutes before he came back. The Sworn Brotherhood in the Peach Garden was being sung. The lyrics were all new. Lu Hao listened intently. The surroundings were quiet and no one made noise. Yuan Zhouzi lifted the corner of his robe as he hurried into the banquet. He didn't sit properly. He didn't listen to the play, but kept looking at Lu Hao as though he wanted to say something but couldn't. He silently waited until the stage was changed. There was an old guest beside Lu Hao. He had seen Yuan Zhouzi peeking his head out and teased him, "Zhouzi, your memory is the best. Can you hear the difference between this new play and the old one?" Yuan Zhouzi didn't listen to what was being sung on the stage. However, he was worried that he didn't have a chance to speak. When he saw Lu Hao looking over, he quickly stood up and said, "I just left the banquet and missed the play in front of me. But I heard another good play. It's really interesting. I want to tell it to your highness. I don't know if it's okay." There were many capable people among Lu Hao's guests and they had their own pride. They didn't like a petty person like Yuan Zhouzi. Therefore, no one said anything to cater to him. However, Lu Hao was a little curious. He raised his hand and gestured to Yuan Zhouzi, "What wife? Tell me." Yuan Zhouzi hurriedly responded. He took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Lu Hao. He gestured with his hands and feet to start from when he went to the toilet a moment ago. It was his first time going to Hungwu Mansion. He didn't know everything. He walked around and went down to the 2nd floor. He crossed the bridge and went to the fragrant grass pavilion opposite. After a few steps, he saw that the door was not closed properly, so he mistakenly entered. Unexpectedly, it was a single room. Several playboys were drinking and chatting. In the west corner, someone was playing the lute, so no one noticed the intruder. Yuan Zhouzi found that he went to the wrong door and was about to leave. At this moment he heard voices in the room and stopped. Who was sitting in the room? It turned out that Yin Yuanbua and a few friends of scoundrels heard Madame Yin's nagging at home yesterday. They were upset and came to Hungwu Mansion to pass the time. You asked him why he didn't go to the brothel to find a lover. Fortunately, Master Yin had been strict with him recently. If he went to that kind of place and someone reported it to the family, he would inevitably be beaten up. Yin Yuanbua vented his anger by drinking. He drank too much and was coaxed by the people around him. Then he began to talk about the cause and effect. "My mother found a wife for me. Unexpectedly, she was the daughter of a servant who was let out of the house. How could such a lowly person be worthy of me, third Master Yin? But this little girl was arrogant and looked down on me. She rejected the matchmaker and came to our house to show off her power." His friend asked curiously, "Is there such a thing? What kind of beauty dared to look down on our third master?" Yin Yuanbua laughed coldly, "Ha, beauty? With that kind of beauty, I wouldn't be able to get excited even if she stripped naked in front of me. She's just a woman who is good at playing tricks. It's good to have a good reputation. To put it bluntly, she's just a bitch who is greedy for power and wealth. On one hand she rejected my family, but on the other hand she came to show off." His friends looked at each other. The more they listened to him, the more confused they became. So they asked, "Who is this person? She sounds like she has some reputation. Have we heard of her?" Yin Yuanbua said, "Why haven't we heard of her? Isn't she the fairy Miaoling who has the ability to call the wind and summon the rain and cast beans to form soldiers?" Everyone exclaimed in surprise. There was no one who didn't know the name of the person in the words. "Why do you say she came to your house to show off? Show off?" The person who asked the question did not believe it. After all, the rumor said that Yushu was a descendant of an immortal family. Even the emperor thought highly of her and gave her a title. Why would such a person want to seduce the young master of an assistant minister's residence? Yin Yuanbua said in a strange tone, "She didn't go for me, a good-for-nothing ruffian. She went for the real third young master of the prime minister's residence, my cousin Yin Yuanrong." Then he said that on the day of Yin Deng's birthday, they met a disheveled Yushu in the backyard. However, his words were biased and he said that this accident was a deliberate plan of Yushu. If I didn't happen to be on the side and saw her ugly appearance with my third cousin, I'm afraid she would have shouted and forced my third cousin to take responsibility for her. Bah. After Yin Yuanbo finished speaking, he spat on the ground with extreme disdain. There were still people who did not believe him. After a few noises, they saw him pointing to the sky and cursing with a red face and neck. If I lied to you, let me be impotent. Hearing this, Yuan Zhouzi saw that there was nothing else to say and quietly left. Back in front of them, on the top floor of Cypress and Cypress Building, Lu Hao and a group of guests listened to Yuan Zhouzi's vivid narration. The former propped up his chin thoughtfully. He didn't speak, so no one could discuss. The performers on the stage were singing a passage. Just after the last note, Lu Hao gave a light laugh and sat up from the couch. He stretched out his leg for the manservant to help him wear his shoes. Then he said to everyone without another word of gossip, "Ben Wang is going to change." Everyone continued to listen to the play. Leaving behind the nervous Yuan Zhouzi and a group of confused guests, he left with his hands behind his back. Outside, he called over Li Mama, who was outside, and whispered a few orders before turning to go to the empty room next door. Li Mama hurried down to the second floor. She grabbed a waiter and asked, "Do you know which room is the third young master of the assistant minister's Fu? Quickly go ask." Ning Wang wanted her to find Yin Yuanbo and secretly bring him here. Do you think this website is good? Please share it. Thank you for the support of the readers. Chapter 688. Shui Yun had come to the Celestial Commissioner. When Yu Shu heard the news, it was already afternoon. It was her bodyguard Su Qing who inquired about it. This morning, a new Shaoqing came to the Celestial Bureau. It is said that she is an immortal from the Mount Longhu Jingyi School. She was appointed by the Great Commissioner. I went to see the scene and saw that the new Shaoqing was a young woman. It seemed that it was inconvenient for her to walk. She was sitting in a wooden wheelchair. Listening to his description, Yu Shu instantly knew who this person was. It was said that the Celestial Commissioner had 3 departments and 2 bureaus. Each department had a chief and a deputy chief. The chief commissioner was in charge of the imperial court, and the junior supervisor was his deputy. The chief of the Kunling Bureau was the right commander, and the deputy was a female official. The chief of the Celestial Bureau was the left commander, and the deputy was called Shaoqing. Yu Shu had long anticipated that Shui Yun would not be content with her lot. Unexpectedly, she had quietly snuck into the imperial astronomer's office and occupied an important position as soon as she arrived. The Celestial Bureau was responsible for the Dian test and the nominal teacher exchange. It was a bit complicated to explain what it did. Let's put it this way. The position of the Celestial Commissioner in the Celestial Commissioner was like that of the Ministry of Personnel in the 6 ministries. The official assessment and audit of the Celestial Commissioner were not managed by the Ministry of Personnel. For example, Yu Shu was a female fortune teller in the Dian test in the 13th year of the Zhaoqing festival. She was the nominal teacher exchange of the Celestial Commissioner, so she had the qualifications to become an official. Therefore, she became the deputy of the first bureau without much criticism. However, because she was a newly appointed official, there was a period of 3 to 5 months of observation. During this period, if she committed any dereliction of duty, the Minister of Justice had the right to report her, and report it to the imperial censor, who would make the final decision. Yu Shu did not have paranoia, nor did she want to measure the heart of a gentleman with her own mean measure. But her intuition told her that Shui Yun might not come with good intentions. Jing Qin did not come today. Otherwise she would have asked him. His little sister had 2 broken legs. Why didn't she know how to behave? She knocked on the table and instructed Su Qing, "You should go out and walk around more these days. Especially pay attention to the movements of Tai Chengxi. Once there is any news, report to me immediately." She stayed in the Kunling Bureau during the day. The 2 bodyguards who were supposed to protect her had no place to use their skills, so she sent them out as spies. Needless to say, one of them really had talent in this area. It was Su Qing. Don't be fooled by his gentle, shy, and honest appearance. However, his ears and nose were very sensitive, and he could always bring back some useful information to Yu Shu, allowing her to be 1 step ahead of others. Yu Shu was not the only one who heard the news that a new female official had come to Taiching Department. The sudden appearance of a young girl took up the position that many people had been eyeing for a long time. Not many people in the Celestial Commissioner were happy. Even if Shui Yun had the banner of Mount Longhu above her head, it was not enough to convince people, especially when there was already a precedent of Jing Chen among the Celestial Commissioner. It was hard for people to have a good impression of Shui Yun, who had also entered through the back door. It had only been 2 days, but someone was already gossiping in front of Yu Shu. The new Miss Shui Yun from Tai Ching Si is not very old. She looks even younger than you, milord. I don't know how much ability she has learned in Taoism. Milord Yu and Milord Jing are friends. I heard that Miss Shui Yun and Milord Jing are fellow disciples of the same sect. Is that true? This person was an official from the comptroller's department, Xan Ye's subordinate. Today he had come to Kunling Bureau to check the finances. When he had the time he came in to visit Yu Shu and gossip. Yu Shu smiled at him. How can I discuss my superior's private matters? Why don't you go back and ask your Milord Xan? He must know. The other man mysteriously moved closer and said, Official Yu, you may not know this, but there are many people in the imperial palace who are not convinced. They are all comparing the newly appointed junior minister to you. Both of you are young, but you are already in an important position. However, you are a true master of the grand evolution divination and a famous female fortune teller. That immortal nun is nothing. Hearing this, Yu Shu stopped smiling and said with a serious face, Even if it is the appointment of the great supervisor, it has its own reasons. It is better for us not to gossip behind his back. After being humiliated by her, the person left resentfully. Seeing that the person had left, Yu Shu snorted coldly and turned to Wen Xiao, and who was looking at her. The original Xiao Qingzheng of Tai Ching Si left his post and returned to his hometown because of his mother's illness. As soon as he left, many aristocratic families had their eyes on that position. One by one they tried their best to recommend him to their superiors. Unfortunately, the great supervisor had another candidate. These people didn't get what they wanted, so it was inevitable that they were unwilling. They couldn't just watch the duck that was already in their mouths fly away. If someone wants to use me as a tool, it depends on whether I am willing to cooperate or not. Indeed, Shui Yun's 2 legs were broken, so she didn't live up to her name. It was really difficult for her to be the Shaoqing of Tai Ching Si. However, she was personally hired by the great supervisor as an exception. If she said anything unfavorable to Shui Yun today, it would be spread all over the Celestial Commissioner tomorrow. Yu Shu didn't want Shui Yun to stay in the Celestial Commissioner, but she also didn't want to stand out and go against the great supervisor. Besides, she wasn't afraid of Shui Yun at all. If they came, they could come and play whatever tricks they wanted. This was her current mentality. Hearing her words, Wen Xiao, and seemed to understand something. After thinking for a while, he asked her, In your opinion, will the new female Shaoqing be pulled down from her position? Yu Shu twirled a newly cut brush and said to him with a smile, Remember, people won't die if they don't ask for it. It would be fine if Shui Yun behaved herself, but if she provoked her, there was only a dead end. There were also people who were happy that Shui Yun became the Celestial Commissioner, such as Lu Tan. He knew the news earlier than anyone else because before Shui Yun became the Celestial Commissioner, she had discussed it with him. She told him that she wanted to become the Celestial Commissioner and asked him to inquire about the vacancies. At that time he was very surprised because Shui Yun's tone was too calm. It was as if she could become a female officer in the Celestial Commissioner with just a word. Lu Tan reported with a skeptical attitude. He inquired about several vacancies in the Imperial Astronomer. The one with the highest position was the junior minister of the Imperial Astronomer. It didn't take long before Shui Yun took office. Thus, among the current Celestial Commissioner, the right commander was his Shu, the Shaoqing of Tai Ching Si was his Shirgu, and the female Imperial Advisor of Kunling Bureau was his Kun seat at the Shuangyang meeting. How could he not be happy? Lu Tan had spent his early years on Mount Longhu and returned to the capital when he was young. Even if he wanted to compete with Ning Wang for the position of Crown Prince, he was not as powerful as Ning Wang. Other than relying on his maternal grandfather's Shui family, he did not even have half a confidant in the court. Under Shui Lingnan's guidance, he was not in a hurry to form a clique for personal gain. Instead, he focused on building his reputation and recruiting talents. However, not long ago the emperor released Ning Wang early, causing him to feel a strong sense of danger. No matter how he looked at it, Emperor Zhao Qing's preferred successor was Lu Hao. Otherwise, why would Lu Hao be involved in the imperial envoy's murder case? And Emperor Zhao Qing banished Lu Yi but was not willing to heavily punish Lu Hao. Otherwise, why would he be sent to a Taoist sect to cultivate while Lu Hao could stay in the stables from a young age and cultivate his power? Otherwise, why would Lu Hao's maternal grandfather Yin Tianho still have military power while his maternal grandfather Shui Lingnan had his military seal taken away before he returned to the capital? Lu Tan was afraid that he would not make it in time. Before he could fully develop his wings, Emperor Zhao Qing would announce the candidates for the position of Crown Prince. Thus, after Jing Chen, it was a good thing that Shui Yun could occupy a seat on the Celestial Commissioner. In his view, whether it was Jing Chen or Shui Yun, they would become his supporters sooner or later. Otherwise, who would they help? There were actually only a few princes who had the potential to become crown prince: Lu Hao, Lu Du, Lu Zhan, and him. The others were either young or had been eliminated early and were not a threat. 8th Prince Lu Du's birth was not enough. His mother was only a noble and had only been promoted because she had done a meritorious service in giving birth to him. 12th brother Lu Chan did not have great ambitions. Now that he was close to him, he could be pulled in as a helper. So from start to finish, his opponent had only been Ning Wang. Ning Wang, who was older than him, more powerful than him, Ning Wang, who was more favored by Fu Huang than him. How could he cut off Ning Wang's advantages? On one side, Lu Tan was happy, but on the other side he was worried. During dinner he couldn't help but be distracted. Xia Jiangmin, who was already Xia Jiangmin, had detected it. She first restrained herself and didn't say anything. After dinner, when tea was served, she sat beside him and asked in concern, "Is there something on Wang Ye's mind? Or is it that tonight's dishes are not to your liking? You didn't eat much." Lu Tan came back to his senses and found that his beautiful and lovely Wang Fei was looking at him with a face full of worry. He couldn't help but smile at her and pinched the back of her hand, replying, "It's nothing. Later you can just send supper to my study." Xia Jiangmin's face blushed slightly. She made a light sound of agreement and didn't ask further. The two were about to be married for a month. A young couple, it was the period of intense affection and sweetness. At night, if Lu Tan wasn't in the study studying military strategies, he would be resting in Xia Jiangmin's Yuxiang Yuan. As for the concubines that his brothers had gifted to him when he opened the Fu, he completely ignored them. This kind of steady and tender Lang Jun, how could Xia Jiangmin not love him? That night, Xia Jiangmin personally sent the bird's nest porridge to the study. Lu Tan left the other people and the husband and wife sat together taking a bite, the sweetness unspeakable. Lu Tan was young and full of vigor. Marrying such a beautiful woman, how could he let her stay in an empty room? So they made their nuptial chamber in the study. The two of them had a good time, making love and forgetting their worries for a moment, and were happy. The next morning, the servants came in to help him wash and freshen up. Before Lu Tan went to court, he didn't forget to mention to Xia Jiangmin, "When I'm not in the Fu, you're bored by yourself. Why don't you invite some friends to come and talk with you?" Xia Jiangmin smoothed his clothes and pouted, "My home is in Jiangnan, how can I have any friends in the stable?" Lu Tan smiled and scratched her nose, reminding her, "Isn't there Yu Lianfang? I remember that you two are very close. Why haven't you been in contact recently?" At the mention of Yu Shu, Xia Jiangmin's eyes lit up. "Can I invite her to the Fu as a guest?" Lu Tan said, "Why not? This Jing Wang Fu belongs to me, you're the mistress, you can invite whoever you want as long as you're happy." Xia Jiangmin instantly beamed with joy. She didn't bother to help him wash and freshen up. She picked up her skirt and walked out. "I'll write an invitation to invite her now." Lu Tan wasn't angry, he shook his head and smiled behind her. "This impatient temper you need to change. P.S. sad face, I don't know how many students are following this article. I wish the students taking the college entrance exam all the best and do better than usual. If you think this website is good, please share it more. Thank you for your support." Chapter 689. The person Shui Rui sent to the south to gather information came back. Because it was related to his secret, he didn't trust anyone else to do it. The person who went was a loyal servant left by his adoptive father. Gue de Shui Rui had kept a total of 9 servants that started with the word Gue. Besides the first Gue that was given to him by Shui Rui's father in the beginning, the others were either convict slaves that Shui Rui had carefully selected from the provider's courtyard, or they were poor people that he'd taken in when he was wandering outside for the past 2 years. They didn't need to go through Xuelingnan's hands at all, and they obeyed his orders obediently. Not all of these 9 people were loyal, so until now only Gueda, Guesana, Guelu, Gueqi and Gueba were left. Gueda was the oldest. When Shui Rui was still a baby, he had already recognized Xuelingnan's father as his master. It seemed that he had been a wanderer for a while when he was young. He was proud of his martial arts and righteousness. Later he offended a local tyrant and his family was killed. When Xuelingnan's father returned to the capital to report on his work, he tried to clear the injustice of his family. After Xuelingnan's father died, Xuelingnan felt an unbearable pain in his heart. At one point he wanted to sell the surviving Gue Dafa, but this loyal servant knelt in front of Xuelingnan's father's coffin and kowtowed a few dozen times until his head was bleeding. He said that Xuelingnan's father had left a will for him to serve the eldest young master, so he insisted on staying by the young Shui Rui's side. In order to avoid Yushu, Shui Rui didn't meet anyone in Wangji Tower. Instead, he went to Nanlin Lumber Company. This was a property left to him by Shui Lingnan after his father's death. Guida arrived at the capital in the morning. Before he came to see Shui Rui, he had washed himself clean. However, he looked much thinner, which meant that he had suffered a lot during this trip. There was a basement in Nanlin Lumber Company. Gui-san was guarding the entrance above. Even a mouse couldn't hear anything. "Uncle Gui, did you find anything?" Shui Rui went straight to the point. He didn't hide anything in front of Guida. He was not Shui family's flesh and blood. Guida knew this 3 years ago. Seeing that he was in a hurry, Guida did not waste any time and reported everything they had gained from the trip to Iyang. "I went to Iyang and visited the county government's warehouse several times. I found out that in the 11th year of Baotai, there were 7 women surnamed Han who moved their households because of intermarriage. Shui Rui learned from Yushu that Yun Hua and his first wife, the Madame Han, were in a relationship. It was around the 11th year of Baotai's reign that they got married. Yun Mufeng was a fake name, so he had no way of finding it. Thus he asked Guida to investigate directly from the Han family. After a woman got married, she would move her family to the man's name. This would be recorded in the local government office. True enough, Guida found 7 suspects and interviewed them one by one. Finally, they locked onto one of them. It was suspected that Yun Hua's first wife was Shui Rui's birth mother. There was a daughter, Madame Han. She married in the 7th month of the 11th year of Baotai. Her husband's surname was Lu and his given name was Yen. He settled down in Sheeping Alley. This old servant found the couple's former acquaintances. According to their recollections, Lu Yen was a guest who went to the capital to take the imperial examination and left his family behind. Later, his wife became pregnant and disappeared without a trace. I don't know where she went. Shui Rui's face was expressionless. He clenched his fists on his knees. His chest felt like it was being pressed by a big hand. It was stuffy and blocked. His reason told him that this Han family was his birth mother. What's her name? Guida hesitated. He reached out and wrote on the small tea table between them, Han Ning. Han Ning. Shui Rui remembered that this was his birth mother. He closed his sore eyes. After a long time, he let out a long breath as if he had removed a burden from his heart. Finally, he was no longer an evil creature of unknown origin. He found his fated parents and knew where they came from, whether they were dead or alive. Young master, do we continue to look for the whereabouts of this couple? After all, Guida had taken care of Shui Rui for so many years. When he saw his reaction at this moment, he guessed that Lu Yen and his wife were Shui Rui's birth parents. Shui Rui's face seemed to be in pain. He couldn't help but recall what happened 3 years ago. At that time, Shui Rui almost became the emperor's son-in-law. Then, the 10th princess died, and the Shui family narrowly avoided a great disaster. One day after that, Shui Rui drunkenly called him over and asked him if he knew who his birth parents were. At that time, Guido was shocked because he had never thought that the son that Shui Zhao was worried about before his death and made him swear to protect was not his biological son. He thought that Shui Rui had heard the rumor, but it turned out that it was not a joke. Shui Rui left without saying a word. The first person to notice that Shui Rui had left home was Guida, and he reported this matter to Shui Lingnan at the first possible moment. After that, he requested to leave the capital to pursue Shui Rui. Until now, Guida still remembered old Master Shui's cold and indifferent expression at that time and the question he asked. Do you know why he ran away from home? Guida wasn't young at that time, so he wasn't stupid enough to tell old Master Shui that he probably went to find his birth parents because he couldn't bear the shock of the truth of his birth. He could only bow his head in front of old Master Shui and cry, I don't know. Then old Master Shui let him go, even though he couldn't get Shui Rui back in the end, and let him wander outside for 2 years. Guida pulled back his thoughts and heard Shui Rui's tired voice. No need. Uncle Gui, go and rest. We'll talk later. Guida wanted to ask why he stopped looking for them. It was so difficult to find a clue. Why did he give up just like that? But as soon as he saw Shui Rui's empty eyes, he swallowed his words and left quietly. He was indeed tired. His bones weren't the same as when he was young. He couldn't rush through the night on horseback and shorten a month's journey to half a month. Now he just wanted to lie down and sleep, not caring about anything else. Guida left, leaving Shui Rui alone. The silence around him made him easily fall into deep thought. Now that he knew who his birth parents were, there was only one question left in front of Shui Rui. How did his adoptive father die? That day, Shui Lingnan was so angry that he revealed his birth with one sentence. At the same time he revealed another fact: Shui Rui's father died because of him. Shui Zhao died when Shui Rui was 6 years old. At that time Shui Rui just started to remember things, so he didn't know the cause and effect. But according to Gui Da's story, Shui Zhao's father went out alone one day. When he came back he suddenly fell ill and died. At a young age Shui Rui learned to wear mourning clothes, so he didn't know what was going on. It wasn't until he gradually grew up that he found the whole thing was full of doubts. For example, why did his father go out alone? Why did Shui Zhao suddenly fall ill? His grandfather claimed that his father died because of him, but Shui Rui couldn't remember what he had done to kill his father when he was young. So the only explanation was that before Shui Zhao's death, Shui Zhao went out for him. 3 years ago, the night before Shui Rui left the capital, he broke into Shui Lingnan's study. He plucked up his courage and asked Shui Lingnan who his birth parents were and who killed his father. Shui Lingnan told him cruelly, "Unless I'm buried, if you want to know who your parents are, go and find them yourself. As for your father, didn't I tell you before? He died because of you." His memory was fixed on the face that hated him. Shui Rui suddenly closed his eyes. His body trembled slightly, and he couldn't help but feel disgusted with himself. He knew that his grandfather might have provoked him on purpose, but he was still afraid. He was afraid that one day when the truth was revealed, he would be unable to face the ugliness. P.S. Chapter 690. Jing Wangfei's invitation was sent to Baochang Street at noon. In the evening, it was placed on Yushu's desk along with a variety of invitations and visiting cards. Yushu would spend some time after dinner every day to deal with these posts. She would reply to the ones that needed to be replied to, throw away the ones that needed to be thrown away, and avoid going if she couldn't. If it really couldn't be done, she would have the servants prepare a gift to send over in her name. This could be considered as building a relationship and not becoming a laughingstock. Xia Jiangmin's invitation was written very formally, not like her tone. The literal meaning was, "The chrysanthemums in Jing Wangfu's garden are all in bloom." She asked Yushu if she was in the mood to admire the flowers with her. She had prepared good wine and food to entertain her. But Yushu still understood the coquettish tone under the words, "The Wangfu is so big and I'm so bored. Come and chat with me." Yushu held the thin invitation and smiled. She had Yun Do grind the ink and immediately wrote back to her, agreeing to visit the day after tomorrow when she was off. After doing all this, it was already late at night. She divined 2 more times before it was time to go to bed. Hearing Yun Do remind her of the time, Yushu didn't want to sleep. She had planned to look through the notes that Sidu Qinglan had copied for her today. She couldn't go to Taisher Shu Garden to listen to the lectures, but it was still beneficial to look at the notes. After hesitating, she decided to finish today's matter today. She took the notes and went to bed. She sat at the head of the bed and flipped through them. Who knew that as soon as she started reading, she got up and went to the study to look for textbooks. She didn't sleep until the latter half of the night. The next day she got up late and rushed to the Celestial Commissioner's roll call. When a colleague saw her, he asked, "Official, you didn't rest well last night, ah?" When she arrived at Kunling Bureau, she sat down and yawned repeatedly. When Shaoan saw that she was very sleepy and suggested, "There's nothing urgent in the morning. Official, you should go to the back and lie down. I'll call you if there's anything." Her office was a suite. There was a bed and quilt in the west room for her to rest at noon. This was the privilege of the adjutant of the first bureau. There were also a few sets of clothes locked in the closet that Yushu usually used in case of emergencies. "Then I'm going to sleep for a while. Wake me up in an hour." Yushu didn't argue with him. He turned around and entered the west room. Closing the door, he took off the starched, well-ironed official robe and laid on the bed in his undergarments. He covered himself with a blanket and fell asleep. Then he slept for an unknown period of time. He could vaguely hear someone talking outside. She was awoken by the disturbance. He sat up in a daze and was putting on his clothes when he heard someone knocking on the door. It was as if he was afraid that she would still be asleep and wake her up. "What's the matter?" she asked. When Xiaoan's serious voice came from the other side of the door, "Your Excellency, Minister Taiching is here to inspect." He didn't say anything else, but Yushu could tell that something was wrong, so she quickly cleaned up, wiped her face with cold water and opened the door to go out. It was about 4 in the morning. The shadows of the trees outside the window shone in. With a glance, Yushu saw Shui Yun, who had stopped in front of her wide and long birch table. Why did she stop there? It was because she was sitting in a wheelchair. After 2 months, Shui Yun's complexion was much better than when Yushu last saw her at Jing Wangfu. At least, she wasn't pale and weak like a gust of wind could blow her away. Yushu noticed that she was wearing a slightly loose official robe. There was a pair of embroidered patches on her shoulders. It was also a leisurely blooming iris, but the difference was that her flower was a deep blue, while Shui Yun's was a light pink. Shui Yun had just picked up a string of agarwood beads hanging on the corner of Yushu's table and played with it. When she heard the sound of the door, she turned her head unhurriedly, leaned against the back of the chair and looked at Yushu up and down. She smiled slightly and said, "I just came here and wanted to look around. Because you are the only one among the Celestial Commissioner who is familiar with you, I came looking for you. I didn't expect to come at the wrong time and disturb official Yu's rest." Yushu looked at Wen Shaoan, who looked uneasy. She went around to the window and sat down. While sending him to ask someone to pour tea, she grinned at Shui Yun and showed a standard fake smile. 2 days ago, I heard that a new vice minister had arrived in the Taiching department. She's about the same age as me and she's also a woman. I was wondering if there was any female disguise artist in the capital that I didn't know. After a long time it turns out to be you, Miss Shui Yun. No wonder, huh? As soon as the two people who hated each other met, they first exchanged a move with a smile with hidden daggers. Shui Yun hinted that Yushu was sleeping in the official office in broad daylight and did not do proper work. Yushu ridiculed her for not being a proper disguise artist and got in through the back door. Now I am also an official in the Celestial Commissioner. Official Yu doesn't need to call me Miss. It is improper. My rank is the same as yours, so you can call me Minister Taiching Shui. Just now she said that she was familiar with Yushu, but in the blink of an eye she put on airs. Shui Yun made it clear that she did not come with good intentions. Yushu was not a vegetarian. She glanced at Shui Yun's left hand that was holding the bead. It seemed that it was not a big deal, so she asked quite straightforwardly, "Official Shui's injury is better? I don't know when you can walk again?" At that time Shui Yun schemed against her and was captured by Prince Ning's people together. She experienced a death tribulation and had the tendons of her hands and feet cut. Under Jing Chen's careful treatment, her hands were saved and gradually healed. However, her legs never got better. This was a sore point in her heart. When Yushu mentioned it in front of her, she almost couldn't maintain her amiable appearance. "You don't need to worry about my injury." Yushu sneered, "Who cares about you? I want you to be a cripple for the rest of your life." She and Jing Chen had fallen from a life-and-death friendship to today's situation. Jing Chen was partly responsible for Jing Chen's lack of assertiveness, but what disgusted Yushu the most was Shui Yun's role as a troublemaker. Shui Yun believed that she was clear about Jing Chen's fate, so she regarded her as a thorn in her side. After meeting her a few times, she had the intention to kill her. She thought that if she died, Jing Chen's Taoist heart would not be moved, so he could not threaten the group of ox-nosed Taoists of Mount Longhu. No matter how she calculated, she made a fool of herself. She did not expect that she, who had almost been killed by her, was the person who they had been looking for. When Xiao and came in with tea and found that the atmosphere was not as harmonious as before, he first refilled Yushu's cup and hesitated for a moment. When he was about to show the tea to Shui Yun, he heard Yushu say to him, "There's no need to trouble yourself. The tea here is cheap, and it's not made with mountain spring dew. Official Shui's body is weak. If you have a headache or fever after drinking it, it will be my fault." Wen Xiao frowned and obediently put the teapot aside. He retreated behind Yushu and acted as a stake. Shui Yun calmed her breathing and secretly told herself not to be angry with this despicable person. She had a way to deal with her. Therefore she smiled gently at Yushu and said, "I just came to say hello to you. I have somewhere else to go later, so I won't disturb you any longer. Do as you please, Lord Shui." Seeing that she was about to leave, Yushu did not intend to stand up to send her off. Instead she instructed Wen Xiao, "Help me send Xiaoqing off. It's not convenient for her to come and go. Don't let her stay in our Kunling bureau." Yushu was the kind of person who would step on someone's sore spot. Even Wen Xiaoan, who did not know their past, could tell that Yushu and the newly appointed Taiching Bureau junior supervisor were enemies and not friends. Shui Yun's eyes darkened. She casually placed the string of wooden beads on the table and signaled the attendants behind her to push her away. When she reached the door, she paused and said to the secretary behind her in a voice that was neither loud nor soft, "Note that Yushu, the female official of Kunling Bureau, hides in the room and takes a nap on duty. She is considered to be slacking in her work." Yushu heard it clearly. Her mouth twitched and she almost pointed her middle finger at the back of Shui Yun's head. Using public office to avenge personal grudges. Good job. When the people left, Wen Xiao worriedly said to Yushu, "This is the fault of slacking in work. If it is recorded 3 times in a row, you will be fined. Your Excellency is still in the examination period. Such remarks are not good for you. Yu Shu pulled a long face and said, I know. You are more familiar with the Celestial Commissioner's Chronicles than me. Keep an eye on me from tomorrow. Don't let me make any mistakes. It seemed that Shui Yun was determined to continue to disgust her. Today's incident was definitely not an accident. When Xiao and felt a little guilty, it's all my fault. If I didn't persuade you to go to sleep, you wouldn't have been caught. Yu Shu waved her hand. It has nothing to do with you. You don't know that I have a big grudge with this new Taiching Si Xiaoqing. She deliberately found fault with me. She didn't care about this. By the way, how did the people outside do their jobs? She broke into my room and there wasn't even someone to inform me? When Xiaoan was about to tell her about this, I also felt strange. She just came in like this. The low-ranking official guarding the door was nowhere to be seen. I took the opportunity to go out and take a look when I was making tea. I found out that they thought the sun was too strong outside and hid in the water heater room to slack off. Yu Shu furrowed her brows and quickly thought it through. She had been in the Kunling Bureau for 2 to 3 months. Perhaps it was because her reputation was loud enough and Jing Qin didn't care, so everyone in the courtyard followed her lead. But as time passed, the subordinates didn't see her lose her temper, so it was inevitable that they would start to play tricks. Your Excellency, what should we do with them? Yu Shu touched her chin and soon came up with a cowardly idea. Let's do it this way. When Lu Hong and Su Qing come back at noon, you take the 2 low-ranking officials to the gate of the bureau and beat them 20 times each with a stick. Beat them slowly. The louder the noise, the better. If someone asks, you tell them that there is a new Taiching Si Xiaoqing. He came out to patrol in the morning and found someone slacking off. Just say that I am not strict enough and want me to punish them severely. Wen Xiao and didn't understand it for the first time, but Yu Shu didn't mind giving him some advice. Isn't she a new official who makes 3 changes? Don't think that I'm the only one. There is always such a big celestial commissioner. Everyone has a share of the good and the bad. Originally, the 3 departments and 2 bureaus were dissatisfied with Shui Yun, the little girl who came in through the back door. Now after Yu Shu made such a scene, everyone knew that Shui Yun was not just a decoration. The original Taiching Si Xiaoqing who left was not a meddlesome person. Everyone had been comfortable for a long time. Suddenly there was such a troublemaker. Everyone would be in danger. Yu Shu tasted the cheap flower tea she packed from Wangji building and was lost in thought. Chapter 691. Yu Shu suffered in the Celestial Commissioner's office during the day. When she returned home in the evening, she put the things she planned earlier on the agenda. After dinner, Yu Shu returned to the upper room. As soon as she entered the door, she waved to Akiko Abe who was sitting on a low stool practicing needlework. Akiko, come here, let's talk. This child was really diligent. Yu Shu asked Xener and her sister to teach her the rules. She saw that other people knew needlework, so she took the initiative to learn. These days, when Yu Shu didn't need her service, she saw her holding a basket and concentrating on threading the needle. Master. When Akiko Abe heard Yu Shu's call, she quickly put down the things in her hands and followed Yu Shu's footsteps. The 2 entered the inner room. She quickly added a lamp to illuminate the room. Yu Shu saw her eyes were slightly red and swollen. She guessed that she stayed up all night, so she asked, "When did you sleep last night?" There were servants and maids on duty outside the master's bedroom in a big family. There was no such rule in her house, but after she bought Xener and Lin from the provider's house, she slowly picked them up. Yesterday, it was not Akiko who slept outside her room. It could be seen that she stayed up all night to learn needlework. Akiko Abe lowered her head and didn't dare to lie. About 3 o'clock. It's almost dawn, Yu Shu thought. Did you doze during the day? No. Akiko Abe quickly shook her head and looked at Yu Shu with wide eyes. She nervously said, I didn't sleep during the day. I know. Yu Shu patted her to comfort her. The shoulder under her hand was thin and small. When she thought that this child came to this place across the sea and had no relatives in the world, she couldn't help but feel a different kind of intimacy. Just like her when she came here, she was like a rootless duckweed. No one would ever know where she came from. Just like her, coming here she was like a rootless duckweed, no one would ever know where she came from. People who can adapt to circumstances always have a way to live. Akiko Abe was brought back from the provider's house less than 2 months ago. Those who could adapt to their circumstances would always have a way to survive. It had been less than 2 months since she brought Nbiki back from the orphanage. The habits of the Japanese could no longer be seen from him. His speech was fluent, and even the rules of being a servant seemed to have been learned well. Her origins were unknown. Although Yushu had made her a servant, she had shown special concern for her. However, regardless of whether it was Yun Do who had followed her since the beginning, or Xaner and Lin Er who had caught up later, none of them had rejected her. Instead, they had taken care of her. This was enough to show that Nbiki was not a fool who only knew how to kowtow and call her master. Nbekue received her sudden compliment. Her face quickly turned red and she seemed a little excited. She rubbed her fingers together, wanting to kneel down and worship him. She then remembered that Yushu didn't like her kowtowing. He knelt down and quietly raised his head. Seeing that she wasn't displeased, he boldly reached out and gently tugged at the hem of her skirt. In a low and respectful voice he called out, "Master." In her eyes, her master was the god who had saved her from the Avicii hell. She was the hope for her survival. However, Yushu couldn't stand her nauseating gaze. It was like a 200-watt light bulb making her eyes hurt. She coughed twice and went back to the main topic. "The book I gave you a while ago, I asked you to circle the words you don't know. I asked you to circle the words you don't know. Have you finished reading them?" Nbiki knew how to write calligraphy. Her handwriting was quite good, but she didn't know many words. Xaner and Lin Er were literate, but they didn't know how to teach others. Moreover, Yushu didn't intend to let her learn how to be a servant in the orphanage. Therefore, she found a thick book of miscellaneous notes for her and asked her to flip through a few pages every day and circle the words she didn't know. Nbiki replied shamefully, "I finished reading it, but I don't know many words." "Bring it to me." "Yes." Nbiki brought the book over. Yushu flipped through it and found that more than half of the words were circled. Thinking of her original plan, she said to her, "Quizi, I have something important for you to do. But before that, you have to recognize all the Chinese characters. I'll find a teacher for you to teach you how to read. Are you willing?" How could Nbiki say no? She had an expression of obedience to Yushu's arrangements. Quizi will listen to master. This was the advantage of Nbiki. If it were Yun Do or Xen, they would definitely be overcautious. They were either afraid that they weren't up to the task or worried that they wouldn't be able to learn well. After instructing Nbiki, Yushu turned around and went to Yu Xiaoxiu's place. Yu Xiaoxiu was doing his homework. The headmaster of Baichuan Academy was quite strict. Every day he had to do homework. Most of the time he had to copy big characters and recite the text. The next day he would check everything in school. If he didn't finish it or didn't do it well, he would be beaten on the palm. To Yushu's relief, Yu Xiaoxiu had never been punished for this. 11 or 12 years old boys were at the age where they loved to play. Every day he would go between the academy and the clinic. He was not naughty, nor did he run around. During dinner today, He Fangji proudly told her that Yu Xiaoxiu could already draw the human meridian diagram by heart. He had started to read the inner canon of the Yellow Emperor. His learning progress was very gratifying. In fact, Yu Xiaoxiu was not smart enough, nor did he have amazing talent. But he could not resist the boy's focus. In this aspect he was exactly the same as Yushu. "Sister." Yu Xiaoxiu saw Yushu coming in and called. Bairan, who was sitting next to him and reading, quickly stood up. She thought that Yushu had something to say to Yu Xiaoxiu, so she wanted to hide. Unexpectedly, Yushu reached out and pressed Yu Xiaoxiu to sit down. "Write your work first. We'll talk after you finish. Bairan, stay here. I have something to say later." Bairan didn't foolishly sit back. Instead, she went forward to pour tea for Yushu and lit the gauze lamp near her. Although Yushu asked him to study with Yu Xiaoxiu and Yu Xiaoxiu never ordered him around like a servant, he would recognize his own identity. Yu Xiaoxiu finished the remaining 2 big characters. Bairan fetched water for them to wash their hands. One sat in front of Yushu and the other stood behind Yu Xiaoxiu. As usual, Yushu first asked her brother about his studies and whether he had been bullied in the academy recently. Finally, she mentioned Bairan. "Every day after school you go to Uncle He's medical center. Does Bairan go with you?" Yu Xiaoxiu said, "Yes, we go to school and go home together." Yushu said, "You go to the medical center to learn medicine. What about Bairan? Does he help?" Yu Xiaoxiu was stunned. He turned his head to look at Bairan and scratched his head. He helps me by the side." Yushu saw that there was no dissatisfaction on Bairan's face. She smiled and poked Yu Xiaoxiu's head. "When you go to be an apprentice you still bring an assistant. I happen to have something to ask Bairan to do. It depends on whether you are willing or not. In the future you go to the medical center after school and let him go directly back to the mansion. How about it?" This time Bairan couldn't be the background anymore. She looked up at Yushu with doubt. "What's the matter?" Yu Xiaoxiu asked. I have a maidservant who knows a few words. I want Bai Ran to teach her to read and write when she is free. She is your study partner. If I want to borrow someone, I have to ask you first. Yu Shu didn't have a whimsical idea. She had already considered this matter. Bai Ran was a son of a rich family. He was enlightened since he was a child. He knew all kinds of zither, chess, calligraphy and painting. His small regular script was very beautiful. Even if his level was not as good as the master in the private school, he was enough to teach Akiko. Besides, they were in the same mansion. It was convenient to come and go. Otherwise, she would really worry about where to find a teacher to teach Akiko. Hearing this, Bai Ran didn't say anything. Yu Xiaoxiu felt strange and said, Your maidservant? Which one? Why do you want her to read? Yu Shu raised her hand and knocked on his head. You don't need to ask so much. Just tell me if you agree or not. Yu Xiaoxiu rubbed his forehead and weakly said, I don't have anything. Sister, you can ask Bai Ran. If he is willing to teach, then let him teach. Yu Shu looked at Bai Ran and said with a pleasant face, If you are willing to teach her, I will give you a monthly salary. I will give you 2 silver coins as a tuition fee. Bai Ran hesitated and said, I have never taught people to read. I am afraid I can't teach well. Yu Shu smiled, What are you afraid of? You just need to let her learn. If she can't learn well, then she is stupid. I won't blame you. Seeing this, Bai Ran felt relieved and agreed. Compared with going to the clinic with Yu Xiaoxiu, teaching a little maidservant to read and writing was more than enough for him to get a monthly salary. Well, I will forget about this month. Starting from next month, you can wait in the yard after school. I will ask the girl to come to you. Well, that's all I want. You can go to bed early after reading. Yu Shu got up and was about to leave. Yu Xiaoxiu followed her and secretly waved to Bai Ran to tell him not to follow. When the brother and sister went to the yard, Yu Xiaoxiu pulled Yu Shu's arm and asked, Sister, I haven't seen Brother Xue for a while. Yu Shu said N and asked him, What? What do you want to see your brother Xue for? Yu Xiaoxiu rubbed his toes and said shyly, I want to go to the suburbs to ride a horse. Yu Shu nodded and said, I say you talk about him for no reason. Must not be because you miss him. Sister. Yu Xiaoxiu was thin-skinned and blushed as soon as she said that. His fair, delicate and slightly immature face was very likable. Well, tomorrow I will ask him. If he has time, let him take you out to play. N? I promise you. Go back to the room and go to bed early. Okay. Yu Xiaoxiu ran back happily. Yu Shu looked at his happy back and felt much better. With the change of living environment, Yu Xiaoxiu became more cheerful and carefree day by day, which made her feel a sense of achievement as his sister. Walking back with her hands behind her back, Yu Shu thought along the way. During the day, she was troubled by Shui Yun in the Celestial Commissioner office. In fact, it was her fault. If she had not stayed up late to read last night, she would not have been so sleepy during the day. Thinking about it, after she entered the Kunling Bureau, she never had enough time. Every day she wasted a lot of time on unnecessary things. She did everything by herself, so she had no time to spare. She asked Nbekue to learn to read with Bai Ran. In fact, she wanted to train a personal assistant to help her record her daily schedule, reply to letters, etc., and help her deal with some private things. Yu Shu wanted to find such a candidate for a long time. But as a confidant, she always felt that she did not trust Xaner and Liner, who were sinful slaves from the family institute. On the contrary, she did not have this concern with Nbekue. Chapter 692. At the end of September, the families who didn't receive the official marriage documents waited for half a month without any news from the Kunling Bureau. The people they sent to send gifts were rejected at the door, and those who went to Madame Yin Deng to make arrangements did not come back. Besides, these families all knew each other and bumped into each other a few times outside the princesses and Yu's residences. Gradually, some people felt that something was wrong. This month, there was more than one family that didn't send the marriage documents. More or less all of them were involved. Why didn't people think too much about it when the Kunling Bureau blocked their marriage documents for no reason? Some smart people could see that there was a reason for this. Obviously, someone had offended someone. The Kunling Bureau's decision-makers were the Right Commander and a female imperial official. The Right Commander was the Emperor's nephew and usually spoke in simple terms. How could they have offended him? Since it wasn't the Right Commander, then there was something wrong with the female imperial official. After thinking about it, when did they offend Yu Shu? Soon, some people linked it to Madame Yin. A while ago, Yu Shu was present at Madame Yin Deng's birthday banquet. Because she had a disgraceful mother, everyone had a deep impression of her. Now that they thought about it, Madame Yin publicly revealed that Yushu's mother used to be her family's servant. How could Yushu be willing to accept it? The more they thought about it, the more they felt that it was true. Thus, someone took the lead and several families went to the assistant minister's residence. You asked them why they didn't go to Yushu? They had a guilty conscience. That day at Madame Yin's birthday banquet, everyone was present. Yushu was exposed in public and they treated it as a joke. In the end, she bore a grudge. It was all Madame Yin's fault. She had nothing better to do than to make fun of the Kunling Bureau's female imperial official. Wasn't she asking for it? When Madame Yin Deng heard the gatekeeper reporting the arrival of the guests, she felt a headache. She thought that this group of people was here to plead for her again. This time they were all here. She couldn't hide even if she wanted to. She had no choice but to invite them in and let them go to the reception hall. As soon as the madams sat down, Madame Yin Deng took the initiative to speak. She sighed first and then put on a bitter smile. I know why you are here. Listen to me first. It's not that I don't want to interfere, but I can't rush it. A few days ago, I personally paid a visit to Yunu's Yufu and met her. When I brought up the marriage certificate, she told me that it was the decision of the higher-ups and that it wasn't up to her. But don't worry, I've already asked her to ask the right commander to find out what's going on. Don't worry, I'll inform you as soon as I hear back. She went to look for Yushu, but she couldn't even get in. He didn't have the face to tell them, so he made up a story to brush them off. Madame Yin Deng knew that Yushu probably did it for her, but she didn't take it seriously. Even if Yushu did withhold the official marriage certificate on purpose, she couldn't withhold it for the rest of her life. 2 to 3 months at most. It was just a bluff. That was what Madame Yin and Deng thought. She didn't know that the madams in front of her had told each other before they came. They all thought that they were implicated by her and had complaints in their hearts. How could they be fooled by her words? Looking at each other, Madame Zhao was straightforward and couldn't help but complain first. It's not that I'm impatient. We've already set a date and we're just waiting for the marriage certificate to be issued this month. The betrothal gifts will be issued next month. With this mess, I don't know how long it will be delayed. Madam, can you give us a definite reply or be the middleman and invite Yunu out? We'll meet and ask her in person. This was what everyone was thinking. Which family didn't follow the official marriage certificate of the Celestial Commissioner? This was the law of Dawn. Without that piece of paper, no one dared to proceed. To put it more seriously, it would be a violation of the law and both parties would be treated as adultery. Yeah, why don't we invite Yunuyu over? Someone agreed. Hearing this, Yin Deng barely maintained her expression and said, the Celestial Commissioner is busy. She's just a female official and doesn't have as much free time as us. How can we meet her whenever we want? No matter how busy she is, she has to go home at night. Madame Zhao interrupted, why don't you show us the way? We can go to her house and look for her. She can't just close the door and refuse to see us. She's just a junior. It's not appropriate for us to mobilize so many people. We don't dare to treat her as a junior. She's a 5th-level official of the Celestial Commissioner. She's 1 level higher than our master. We have to salute her when we see her. Yin Deng didn't expect them to be so difficult to deal with. She was speechless and her face fell. After a while, someone said with dissatisfaction, Madame Yin, it's really suspicious of you to make excuses like this. Forgive me for being blunt, but before I came here I heard some rumors. They said that the marriage certificate wasn't sent to us this time, and it was all Yunuyu's doing. It was all because we got close to your family and you offended her, so we were implicated. The one who spoke was Madame Song. Her master was the vice minister of Guanglu Temple and had the same rank as Yin Zhorong. The Song family was an old family of officials and eunuchs in Anling City. The late old master Song was once the right prime minister of the late emperor. Therefore, when Madame Song questioned them, she was more confident than others. The other families more or less had to listen to Yin Deng, but she didn't have to. Now that the window paper was broken, Yin Deng felt guilty, but she had to force herself to continue. She pretended to be surprised and said, what do you mean? Why did I offend someone and cause you to suffer? Madame Song saw that she was still pretending and was annoyed. She said without mercy, if not Madame Yin, why don't you invite Yunu here? I'll ask her in person what's going on. Madame Zhao also shouted, that's right. Whether it's true or not, you can ask Yunu here. Didn't Madame Yin say that her mother used to be a servant in your family? It's not impossible that you can't ask her. Other than Madame Yen, who couldn't speak because Master Yen was Master Yin's subordinate, the others all agreed. It seemed that they wanted to force Yin Deng to call Yushu over to confront her face to face. After all, children were the flesh of their parents. Especially their mothers, they didn't have the mind to care about the power of the Yin family in the face of marriage. Yin Deng wasn't a person without a temper. Being surrounded like this, she was also angry. She snorted and shouted, "Enough! I told you that you're guests. If you continue to pester me, don't blame me for being rude. What does that Yushu have to do with me? But her mother used to be a servant in my family. Now she wants to make things difficult for you. You can't do anything about it, so you come to vent your anger on me? I think you're too angry and came to the wrong door. Someone send the guests out." After saying that, she flicked her sleeve and left from behind the screen. Because of this, both sides turned against each other. Women were born narrow-minded. No matter how good their friendship was, they could become enemies if they turned against each other. Madame Yin persuaded Madame Song and others to leave with a bitter smile. She also complained about Yin Deng in her heart. Hearing them talking about Yin Deng behind her back, she couldn't help but complain a little too. Yin Deng didn't expect that she had lost her temper in order to get out of trouble, but in the end she had made so many enemies for herself. Yin Deng went back to her room. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She couldn't even eat. Yin Yuanbo came back from fooling around outside. He heard that his mother hadn't eaten dinner and asked if his father was at home, so he went to find him. When Madame Yin saw her son, she couldn't help but complain, "Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor." They couldn't get the official marriage certificate, but they didn't go to that wicked girl. Instead, they came to make trouble for me. They insisted that I offended someone, so I made things difficult for them. The Song enterprise is nothing. They brought people to our house and yelled at me. They think that our Yin family is easy to bully, right? And that damned Yushu. She is so vicious at such a young age. She beat around the bush and deliberately framed me. She should be killed. When Yin Yuanbo heard that it had something to do with Yushu, his face became gloomy. His eyes flickered and he said to Yin Deng, "Mother, don't worry. Your son will avenge you." Yin Deng was angry. She thought Yin Yuanbo was trying to make her happy, so she didn't take it seriously. She didn't know that Yin Yuanbo went out early the next morning. He quietly went to Prince Ning's mansion with a trusted servant. Yushu expected that someone would come to her to plead for her, but she didn't expect that the first one would be Shui Rui. In the evening, she returned home from the official office. As soon as she changed her official uniform, she heard a maid reporting that Lord Shui had come. "I heard that you haven't sent out a few official marriage documents this month?" Shui Rui asked as soon as he saw her. Yushu raised her eyebrows and said, "Who told you that?" Shui Rui shook his head and smiled. "After the morning court, Lord Song of Guanglu Temple stopped me and asked me to plead for you. His eldest son has set a marriage and only needs the official marriage documents. The betrothal will be sent in half a month. He is very anxious." Yushu rolled her eyes and slowly walked to him and sat down next to him. She asked, "Did he tell you why his family didn't send out the marriage documents?" Shui Rui naturally inquired about it. Lord Song didn't say it clearly. But from what he said, it seemed that the wife of Assistant Minister Yin of the Ministry of Revenue offended you. His wife was close to Mrs. Yin, so she was implicated. Yushu nodded. "That's about it." Shui Rui frowned. "What happened between you and the Yin family? Why didn't I hear you mention it?" He took the time to come here not only to persuade her, but also to be curious about the dispute between Yushu and the Yin family that made her so angry that she vented her anger on others. Yushu looked at him and thought that she couldn't tell him that she was made a fool of by Mrs. Yin and made a fool of in front of the two brats of the Yin family. She made a draft in her mind and said, "Did you forget that I told you that my mother was a servant of a family in the capital, which is Assistant Minister Yin's family? Earlier my mother sneaked into their house and recognized Yin Deng. Last month, on her birthday, my mother pestered me to go. As a result, she was humiliated by Yin Deng in public. She said that I was a servant of her family and ordered me around. At that time, most of the people present saw it as a joke. I was so angry that I tore up the official marriage documents of those families." Hearing this, Shui Rui was angry and amused. "You've only been in office for 2 months and you've already learned to avenge private grudges. That Mrs. Yin was really stupid." Regardless of how disgraceful Shu's background was, she was now an official of the imperial court and the favored messenger Miaoling by the emperor. Her reputation was known by everyone in the city. If one went out for a walk, he should have heard 1 or 2 glorious deeds of hers. How stupid one was to provoke her. Yushu curled her lips and said, "What I did is nothing. Someone has just been in office for 2 days and she has already begun to avenge private grudges." What? Yushu waved her hand and didn't want to mention Shui Yun's stare at her all day. She changed the topic. Anyway, I have done it. I can't swallow it. But since you have come to intercede, I can't embarrass others. You mean Lord Song of the Guanglu Temple, right? I'll remember it. When you see him tomorrow, tell him that I will send the official marriage documents to his house 3 days later. Tell him not to worry and wait for the wedding. She could not give face to anyone, but she could not embarrass Shui Rui. Seeing that she was so easy to talk to, Shui Rui didn't know whether he should be happy or worried. He pondered for a moment and said, "You can't keep these marriage documents. After all, not everyone is as perceptive as Song Xiaoxue. They know that you are not to be trifled with. If someone is stubborn and goes to the Celestial Commissioner, it won't be easy for you to deal with it." Yu Shu said coldly, "If anyone dares to come and make trouble, I will return their family's 8-word calligraphy and give them a warning. Let them make trouble." Shui Rui was a little regretful. Did he give her some bad inspiration when solving Jin Sun's marriage? Seeing the tangled expression on Shui Rui's face, Yu Shu couldn't help laughing. She patted him on the shoulder and laughed, "Brother, don't worry. I'm not so stupid. After all, it's only Madame Yin and Deng who annoyed me. It has nothing to do with others. When they find out who they are implicated by, I think they will stop and won't ruin the marriage." Shui Rui thought for a while and decided to see Lord Song tomorrow. At least he could give an explanation. Yu Shu kept the marriage documents. It was Madame Yin and Deng's fault for mocking her family background. It was also wrong for the madams of their families to watch the fun. Don't hit people in the face. Don't expose people's shortcomings. After that, Yu Shu asked Shui Rui again, "Has there been any news from the people who went to the south?" Shui Rui's eyes flashed and he shook his head. "No, let's wait." Chapter 693. As the sun set, Jing Qin came out of the palace. In the carriage that accompanied him was an imperial physician who had been appointed by the emperor. Emperor Zhao Qing tried to find out the truth about their trip to the princess's tomb, but failed. So, he started to investigate how Jing Qin was attacked by a murderer in the south and had his acupoints pierced with silver needles. Jing Qin lost his memory for a while. After He Fangji treated him, he recovered his memory, but he forgot the most important part. Who was the one who beat him up and threw him on the river? He recalled that a year ago, after he said goodbye to Yu Shu, he left Yang and went to Jianya City alone to meet up with Prince Xiang's men. It was during this time that he was attacked. However, he couldn't remember the details. How he was poisoned and how he floated on the river. Emperor Zhao Qing knew about this and thought it was because he was poisoned. He found a few good royal doctors to diagnose him, but they couldn't tell him anything. So he put it down. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Today, he brought up the past again and gave him a royal doctor to follow him back to the princess's mansion. The doctor helped Jing Qin recuperate his memory so that he could catch the murderer. In short, no matter if it was Yun Hua who stole the Book of Fairy Woman or the thieves who poisoned the Graden people, Emperor Zhao Qing wouldn't let them go. He would catch and kill them all. Back at the princess's mansion, Jing Qin was tired for many days and couldn't eat. He washed up and was about to sleep when Shui Yun heard the news. Jing Qin didn't see her, so she stayed outside Sushi Pavilion. He rested for an hour. When he woke up, the moon was high in the sky. Hearing that she was still waiting outside, he put on his clothes and asked someone to bring her in. "Senior brother." It was a cold autumn night. Shui Yun sat on a wooden wheelchair. She wore a heavy cloak and a hood. It was obvious that she came prepared. She knew that Jing Qin wouldn't see her easily. But she knew better. Jing Qin was soft-hearted. He wouldn't leave her alone. "It's so late. What are you doing here instead of sleeping?" Jing Qin walked down the stairs. His black hair fell loosely on his shoulders, making his skin look too pale. His clothes were thin and his shoulders were thin. Shui Yun hadn't seen him for half a month. Seeing him like this, she couldn't help but worry. "What have you been busy with recently? Are you injured or sick? I heard that you brought an imperial physician back and was worried, so I came over to ask about it." Jing Qin put his hands behind his back and stopped 3 feet away from her. With a faint expression, he said, "The imperial physician was bestowed by the emperor. I'm not sick." Shui Yun was puzzled. "Then why did the emperor grant you the title of imperial physician?" Jing Qin looked back at her. He tries to distinguish whether she is concerned or probing from her face. He doesn't like to lie. Moreover, Shui Yun knows that he lost his memory, so he tells her concisely, "The emperor wants to arrest the people who tried to kill me on my way to the capital. So he sent Imperial Dr. Zhou to help me recover my memories. You should have done this long ago." Shui Yun verbally agreed, but she didn't think so. "It's just that it's been so long, but you still don't remember." Does that imperial physician Zhou have any skills? I heard that the great Tidian has an only son who is the successor of the medicine king of Nanmiao. If you want to find out why you lost your memory, why not ask him to diagnose you? Jing Chen slightly frowned and said, Are you talking about Zhu Qingjue? I've seen him in the palace. This wasn't the first time Zhu Qingjue took his pulse. When he was first recognized by Emperor Zhao Qing, the first time he entered the palace, he summoned Zhu Qingjue to check his body. It was this young medicine king who determined that all the silver needles in his body had been removed. Without any hidden dangers, Emperor Zhao Qing was relieved to let him live in the princess residence. In the past few days in the palace he saw Zhu Qingjue almost every day. Occasionally he would be treated with acupuncture and was forced to drink some bitter medicine. Hearing this person's name, he subconsciously felt his stomach ache. Shui Yun wanted to ask for more details, but Jing Chen didn't give her the chance. I'm really tired. Go back and sleep. If there's anything else we can talk tomorrow. Shui Yun thought that staying any longer would only annoy him, so she considerately said, Then I'll leave. Xixiang should quickly rest. She had someone push him to the side of the door. As she turned around she said to him, Is Xixiang going to the Celestial Commissioner's office tomorrow? When he had time he would go to the Kunling Bureau to see if Yushu had something to talk to him about. Jing Chen was distracted when he heard Shui Yun's excited voice. Then I'll wake up early and wait for you. We'll go together. Yushu's right eyelid kept twitching when she woke up in the morning. Before she left, she did a divination and the result made her speechless. What kind of ghost divination is this? A peach blossom calamity. How can I have a rotten peach blossom? She rubbed her eyelids and muttered as she went out. When she arrived at the Kunling Bureau, she saw Wen Xiao, and waiting for her at the door of the outer courtyard before she entered. When he saw her, he took 2 steps forward and whispered, Right, Commander Darren came early in the morning. With him is the new Tai Ching Bureau's Shui Darren. The two of them are talking in the meeting hall downstairs. They seem to be waiting for you. Yushu thought that it was bad luck to see the god of plagues in the morning. Baba. I know. Let's go in. When she came to the door of the East Pavilion, she saw Jing Chen and Shui Yun sitting at the top. Xialan, Ren Jia, and a few other servants were accompanying them. Today was the first day of the month. Since everyone was here, they could start the morning meeting. Jing Chen was the same as her. Although he was qualified to attend the morning court, he didn't pass the examination because his term was less than 3 months. He didn't have to go to the palace to see the emperor on the 1st and 15th day of the month. As soon as she entered the door, everyone got up to greet her. Even Jing Chen stood up. If Shui Yun didn't get up, she also couldn't get up. Yushu laughed at them in her heart. They were looking for fun for themselves. She returned everyone's greetings and picked a seat to sit down. She looked up and smiled at Shui Yun. Isn't the Tai Ching Bureau busy? Official Shui came to visit our Kunling Bureau early in the morning? You're looking for trouble again if you have nothing to do. Shui Yun also replied with a smile. I came early, unlike official you who came at the right time. If you came a bit later you would be late. It would be strange if I didn't remember you. Jing Chen didn't know whether or not he saw the daggers hidden in their smiles. He coughed lightly and said to Shui Yun, We have a meeting to discuss. It's not convenient for you to be present. You can go back. He asked her to leave, but Shui Yun wasn't angry at all. She obediently responded, Then I'll go somewhere else first. I'll come find you later. Jing Chen wanted to tell her not to come, but before he could say anything Shui Yun had someone push her away. Before going out, she didn't forget to turn her head and stare at Yushu. Her expression and smiling face all seemed to be showing off. Yushu secretly rolled her eyes and turned her head to meet Jing Chen's apologetic eyes. She couldn't blame him even if she wanted to. Instead she felt some sympathy for him. If he got involved with Shui Yun, this shit-stirrer, he would never be able to live a peaceful life. How pitiful. After the meeting as usual, Yushu followed Jing Chen up to the 2nd floor. When did Shui Yun become the Celestial Commissioner? Jing Chen closed the door and asked her. She's been here for a few days. Why don't you know? Yushu looked at him suspiciously. She didn't believe that he didn't know that they were fellow apprentices under the same roof. Jing Chen said, She said that she would come before, but I stayed in the palace. I didn't expect that she would enter the Tai Ching Bureau without saying a word. So Yushu believed him and asked curiously, Is her hand healed? Can she do divination? Shui Yun used to be Lu Tan's Kuan-shi. She seemed to know a strange skill of reading people. That day she saw Shui Yun playing with the beads on her table. She thought that Shui Yun's hand was fine and she could do divination, so she appointed her as the Shaoqing. She was not afraid of people's words. Jing Qin shook his head. The wound is healed, but she can't do divination with the black iron prescription. In the study of Yi Shui Yun's Qiqiao Linglong heart could help her understand the truth. But she could only do divination with the black iron prescription. The black iron prescription had 64 lots. Including the lot pot, it weighed 2 caddies. With her wrist strength, she definitely couldn't shake the black iron prescription. She couldn't even hold it, let alone do divination. Yu Shu was puzzled. Then I don't understand. Why did you arrange her to be the Shaoqing of the Taiqing Bureau? Even if it was because of her friendship with your Jingyi sect, she could have just been given an idle position. A few days ago, she beat 2 guards at the entrance of the Kunling Bureau and asked people to spread the news. This caused the imperial astronomer to misunderstand that Shui Yun was a troublemaker. Over the past few days, everyone in the imperial astronomer felt insecure, and there was much criticism. In private, everyone said that it was inappropriate to appoint Shui Yun as a high scholar. If it wasn't for the Daoqing's high prestige, at this moment there would probably be people questioning him. Hearing her doubt, Jing Qin wanted to say something but stopped. Yu Shu's eyes were sharp. She immediately saw something fishy and refused to let it go. She asked, "Tell me why." Jing Qin couldn't hide it from her. After thinking for a while, he told her the truth. When Shui Yun went down the mountain to find me, she brought something to the Daoqing on behalf of my uncle Master Huai Yun. As a thank you, the Daoqing promised her something. I think she wanted to use this to become an official in the Celestial Commissioner. What is it? It's so precious? Yu Shu's curiosity was aroused. An item that could be exchanged for a 5th-rank official position in the Celestial Commissioner must be a priceless treasure. Jing Qin knew that she would ask, so he didn't dwell on it. He said solemnly, "I'll tell you, don't tell anyone." "Well, tell me quickly. My mouth is sealed." "I won't tell anyone," Yu Shu urged. TSK Jing Qin had learned to talk about conditions. It was probably because he had been deceived for a long time that he became more shrewd. "Not even your sworn brother." "I promise I won't say anything, okay?" She just praised him for being smart and he was stupid. If she wanted to tell Shui Rui, she wouldn't care about this temporary promise. "It's the Chun Jun sword." "What?" Yu Shu didn't hear it clearly the first time. So Jing Qin said it again, "The Chun Jun sword, one of the 6 founding instruments of Da," and he automatically added an annotation. Yu Shu hesitated for a moment. She took a deep breath and said to him with a serious face, "You're joking with me." "What a joke." Didn't Xenia tell her that the 6 founding instruments, which were rumored to be heaven-defying, were all buried with Empress Ningzhen? Where did this Chun Jun sword come from? Chapter 694. When Yu Shu heard this secret, she couldn't help but be shocked. She first heard about the 6 founding weapons when she was a student of the Taisha Library. She was selected to be part of the procession on the day of the sacrifice. At that time, each of the 6 people held a fake bronze weapon, namely the book, sword, ruler, tripod, compass and rui. It was said that the real weapons were buried under the emperor's mausoleum to suppress souls. As the founding emperor of Da, and Emperor Anwu himself was a legendary figure, not to mention his mysterious Empress Ningzhen. It was rumored that Emperor Anwu used these 6 magic treasures to lead the revolutionary army and overthrow the tyranny of the Jins against the Han people. Originally, such a legend was just a rumor. But Yu Shu got a fake Taiqing tripod from Xenia. She burned incense and divined. It allowed her to use the 6 lines technique, which required a high qualification of a teacher. It completely ignored her poor root bone. Furthermore, she had the black ring given to her by Taoist Qing Zheng, which came from the same place as the secret treasure on the emperor's body. They were both stars carved out from another of the 6 founding artifacts, the 7-star ruler. A fake and a part had such a magical effect. How could the 6 founding weapons go against the natural order? Just thinking about it made people excited and couldn't help but want to bow down and worship. Now, Jing Qin actually told her that Shui Yun brought a real thing from Mount Longhu to the capital and handed it to the Great Tipping Point. It was incredible. How do you know so clearly? First of all, Yu Shu was suspicious of the source of Jing Qin's information. The 6 founding weapons were antiques that made people want to kill and rob them. Would Mount Longhu's righteous sect be so generous as to return them to their rightful owners? Didn't they think of keeping it? She didn't believe it. Jing Qin looked down and said in a clear voice, "Do you remember that day when I met you in Yang? I used to carry 2 swords." Yes. Of course she remembered. At that time, Jing Qin was pure like a handful of spring water in the mountain stream. He wore a white Taoist robe and carried two swords that were not unsheathed. Under the bright moonlight, he appeared in front of her. He was full of righteousness and didn't provoke the world of mortals. Of those two swords, one is my sword, and the other was handed to me by Master the night before I left the mountain. He asked me to bring this information to the Celestial Commissioner. At the time I thought it was just a gift, but now that I think about it, it might be the reason why I was hunted down in Janya. Yu Shu's eyes suddenly widened. Jing Chen's words were incoherent. Although she was confused, she still grasped the key point. Didn't the people who attacked you in the south do it to stop you from entering the capital? From the beginning, they had identified the group of people who were chasing after Jing Chen as rebels and traitors. They had a clear understanding of Jing Chen's identity as a Dayan calamity, so they ambushed him on his way to the capital in order to achieve their goal of destroying the fate of the Dayan kingdom. Jing Chen shook his head. I thought so too until I saw Shui Yun returning the Chunjun sword to the Celestial Commissioner. I heard them talking. That was 2 months ago? Ever since Jing Chen and Yu Shu entered the Celestial Commissioner one after another, Shui Yun had some doubts. She had pressed Jing Chen several times to tell her who the person was, but Jing Chen was tight-lipped. She wanted to enter the Celestial Commissioner. According to her first statement, she was entrusted by her master to help sort out the Taoist classics in the Celestial Commissioner. Jing Chen didn't think much of it. He only thought that she was deliberately testing his relationship with Yu Shu, so he didn't stop her. One day Jing Chen and the great teacher were talking in the Taishi Tower. The guard outside reported that Shui Yun had come. The great teacher asked him to hide behind the curtain. It seemed that there was something inconvenient for him to be present. After Shui Yun came in, she didn't find that the wall was eavesdropping. She asked the accompanying attendants to leave, leaving only her and the great teacher. Then she said, "This time the head of the sect asked me to bring something to Uncle Zhu. Because I was seriously injured, I didn't come until now. I hope you don't mind." The great teacher asked her calmly, "I didn't hear the head mention it in the letter. What did he ask you to bring?" Shui Yun smiled and said, "Uncle, you don't have to test me. Since I dared to bring it down the mountain, I must know the value of Chunjun sword." Hearing the words Chunjun sword, the great teacher's voice became solemn. "In that case, thank you, Miss Shui Yun. You don't have to thank me. But I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can promise me one thing since I took the risk to bring the sword." "Oh? Tell me, as long as it is within my ability, why not?" Shui Yun took the opportunity to mention that she wanted to become an official of the Celestial Commissioner. The great teacher agreed without hesitation. He didn't ask why she suddenly wanted to become an official of the Celestial Commissioner. He just cared about her health. "Uncle, you don't have to worry about me. I haven't fully recovered now. When I get better, I will ask for a favor from you." Having said that, she asked the great teacher to come forward and take out the sword box hidden under the wooden wheelchair. At this time Jing Chen opened the curtain and peeked. He saw the great teacher holding a vermilion short sword. It was about 2 feet long and the sword body was black. It looked like it was made of bronze. It was an antique from a long time ago. The great teacher examined it carefully. After a while he heard Shui Yun ask him, "Is there anything wrong?" He then sighed and said, "The 6 founding weapons are not as good as seeing. It is exactly the same as what I saw on the map. It should be real." Shui Yun heaved a sigh of relief. Then, with a doubtful expression, she asked hesitantly, "I have a small question." The great teacher's attention was still on the sword. "What?" "It is said that 30 years ago we told the former emperor that Chunjun sword was in our sect. Why did the current emperor only ask for it now? The 6 founding weapons were precious treasures. When the Dan imperial family heard the news, shouldn't they be in a hurry to get it back? Why did they keep it on Mount Longhu?" The great teacher turned his head and looked at her with a smile. He asked, "How do you know that the former emperor did not ask for it? Maybe Mount Longhu is not willing to return it?" Shui Yun was surprised. She then understood and said, "I shouldn't have asked. I am being nosy." The great teacher shook his head and put the Chunjun sword back into the sword box. He then suddenly said, "Does Jing Chen know that you brought the sword down the mountain?" "He does not know." She frowned and her expression became serious. "I hope that uncle will keep his mouth shut. Do not let him know that I came to find you today." The great teacher nonchalantly glanced at the figure hidden behind the curtain. He turned back and stared at her. "Why?" "It was ordered by the sect leader. I'm also not sure." "All right." The great teacher replied, "I will not tell him." The sword was returned. Shui Yun got what she wanted and left in satisfaction. After she left, Jing Chen walked out from the darkness. He was puzzled and asked, "Why did you let me hide and listen to this?" The great teacher held the sword box and sat back behind the table. He looked up at him and said, "Have you heard of the 6 founding weapons?" "I have heard of it. The Chunjun sword is one of the 6 weapons. About 300 years ago, Empress Ningzhen passed away. Emperor Anwu ordered the 6 weapons to be buried with her. 100 years ago, during the reign of Emperor Shizong, he had a prince who was very rebellious. He sneaked into the forbidden area of the imperial mausoleum and stole the Chunjun sword. He fled the capital and disappeared. The Chunjun sword disappeared with the prince for decades. 30 years ago, on a certain day, the Chunjun sword disappeared. On a certain day 30 years ago, the 23rd generation sect leader of Mount Longhu sent someone to the capital to meet the emperor and inform him of the whereabouts of the Chunjun sword. It turned out that the prince who stole the treasure changed his appearance and escaped into Mount Longhu. He became a cultivator. Before he died, he repented and handed the Chunjun sword to the sect, asking the sect to return it to the imperial court. The great teacher explained the cause. After listening, Jing Chen asked the same question as Shui Yun. It was said that it happened 30 years ago. Why did they only return the Chunjun sword today? The great teacher did not answer him perfunctorily. He stroked the flat sword box and said meaningfully, "Because at that time the head of the Jingyi sect put forward a condition, but the former emperor did not agree." Jing Chen thought and said, "Then why are they willing to return it now?" "Of course, the condition that the former emperor did not agree to. The current emperor agreed to it." "What condition?" Jing Chen asked subconsciously. The great teacher smiled slightly, "A secret edict." Jing Chen took 2 steps forward and asked again, "Why did you let me hide and eavesdrop? If I tell you the truth directly, you may not believe it, right?" The great teacher looked at him with gentle eyes. He completely showed the patience that an elder should have. "In fact, according to our agreement with Mount Longhu, you should have brought the Chunjun sword back to the capital. The emperor sent Prince Xiang to the south to pick you up, which was to protect you. He also escorted the Chunjun sword back to the capital. Who knew that the Jingyi sect did not give the sword to you, and you disappeared for no reason, so Prince Xiang came empty-handed. Besides the emperor, me and Prince Xiang, who else knew your whereabouts in the capital? Why were you intercepted on the way? Have you thought about it carefully?" Jing Chen followed the great teacher's lead and continued, "Someone leaked my whereabouts. Except for you, only the sect knew where I was going. I'm a big trouble. The head and master have no reason to harm me, so the one who leaked my whereabouts is—" He did not say the name, but he already had the answer in his heart. The great teacher nodded lightly and said, "There are many experts in Mount Longhu who can predict good or bad luck. The elders in your sect probably predicted that you would be plotted against on the way, so they did not hand the Chunjun sword to you. Instead, they entrusted it to your junior sister and let her go to the capital with the 9th prince to secretly bring back the Chunjun sword. Do you know why that group of thieves captured you and severely injured you, yet they left you alive and didn't eliminate you once and for all? That is because their purpose was not to kill you, but to get the 6 founding weapons that you are likely to have with you. Do you remember, when I first met you in the Celestial Commissioner, you told me that your master wanted you to bring me a sword, but you lost it on the way. I did not expect it. Today, when I saw your junior sister, I just figured out what the elders in your sect were thinking." The great teacher's eyes were cold and he said in a deep voice, "Before they got the secret edict of the emperor, how could they rest assured to return the Chunjun sword? They were worried that the emperor would go back on his words after getting the Chunjun sword, or send someone to snatch the treasure. So they used you as a cover. Knowing that you will not be in danger, they did not care about your safety. Who would have thought that they would have the guts to use a big trouble like you to test the waters?" Hearing this, Jing Chen finally understood. The great teacher asked him to hide in the dark and eavesdrop, to let him realize that the sect, which had been very kind to him, only regarded him as a chess piece. It should have been a heavy blow, but Jing Chen did not feel very disappointed at the moment. It was probably because in his mind, Mount Longhu was no longer the home that sheltered him from the wind and rain. "Why do you think your junior sister took out the Chunjun sword today?" That was because the secret edict of the emperor had reached Mount Longhu. She received the news and was relieved to return the sword to its original owner. And she was afraid that you would guess the truth and be angry, so she told me to keep it a secret before she left. Jing Chen stood in the same place. For the first time he understood what it meant to be disheartened. Master always said that the Great Way was ruthless. Was it like this? He looked bleak and whispered, "Can you tell me, as one of the 6 founding weapons, What is the use of the Chunjun sword? It was so important that the emperor compromised. What was the amazing use of this sword? The great teacher smiled and shook his head. I will tell you after you and the life breaker get married and have children. Back in front of her, after Jing Chen finished narrating this hidden story, Yushu did not know how to feel for a moment. Was it sympathy for Jing Chen's experience? Was it contempt for the group of sanctimonious old Taoists in Mount Longhu? Or was it the last hint of the great teacher? She rubbed her thumb with her index finger and fell into a period of contemplation. Do you think that the group of people who chased after you in Jianya City was Prince Yang's men? Jing Chen looked up and met Yushu's dark eyes. He sighed and said, I can't remember the process of me being chased. So after getting the Chunjun sword, the emperor summoned him to the palace to avoid Prince Yang's eyes and ears. He asked Zhu Qingjue to diagnose him every day. He wanted him to remember that part so that he could follow the clues and find the culprit behind the scenes. Yushu frowned. She had long suspected that there was something wrong with Prince Yang. After all, he was the one who went to the south to meet Jing Chen under the guise of sightseeing. In the end, he did not receive Jing Chen. After returning to the capital, he announced to the public that he lost a painting and used it as a question in the Dian examination. But Prince Yang had always acted like an idle marquis. He did not care about politics. He did not have any real power in his hands and he did not form any cliques. He completely enjoyed his life and had no ambitions. If it was really him who leaked Jing Chen's whereabouts and sent people to kill Jing Chen, just to take the Chunjun sword, what was he after? Was he trying to usurp the throne? Was there something wrong with his brain? Did he think that by stealing a sword he could command the world? It's not like it's the dragon saber. Yushu whispered. What saber? Jing Chen's ears were sharp and heard it. Yushu waved her hand. Let's not talk about this. From what I see, the great teacher let you know so many things. There are only two purposes. One is to weaken your sense of belonging to Mount Longhu and the other is to urge you to do it with me. Don't be fooled by him. Who knows which of his words is the truth and which is a lie? I know. Also, regardless of whether it was Prince Yang's doing or not, from now on, you must be more vigilant. Don't fall into other people's trap. She casually reminded him. Hearing this, a smile floated in Jing Chen's eyes and he nodded. Yushu stared at him inexplicably. I've been up there for too long. I'll go down first. She went down the stairs alone and met Shui Yun, who was being pushed into the hall in a wheelchair. When Shui Yun saw her coming down the stairs, she quickly frowned. She raised her hand to signal the attendant to stop. When Yushu walked in front of her, she slowly said, Is my senior brother upstairs? Yushu had just heard Jing Chen's confession. She pitied him for being a little cabbage that no one loved. Her malice towards Mount Longhu rose to a whole new level. Meeting Shui Yun, she was too lazy to put on airs. She smiled coldly and said, Don't you have long legs? Can't you go up and see for yourself? After that, she walked a few steps forward into her room and swung her hand to close the door. Opposite her, when Shaoan stared behind her and hesitantly advised in a low voice, Lord Shui's face is green. Your Excellency, you misspoke. Yushu spat. Am I afraid of her? What a troublemaker. P.S. Chapter 695. On the second day after Jing Chen returned to the princess mansion, Zhu Qingjue followed him. In order to avoid Shui Yun's eyes and ears, Jing Chen directly asked someone to bring him to Sushi Pavilion. Zhu Qingjue carried a pitch-black medicine box with him. He still looked like the wanderer of Weijing with wide sleeves. He looked like he was going through his routine. After sitting down, he did not exchange greetings and directly asked Jing Chen, How did you rest these 2 days? Did you have insomnia at night? Jing Chen answered, Yes, I didn't sleep well. Ever since he came back from paying respects to Princess Liyue, Emperor Zhaoqing frequently asked him to stay in the palace. Every day, he called Zhu Qingjue to examine him and prescribe medicine in an attempt to make him remember the lost memory. Who knew that after drinking a few bites of his medicine, he would occasionally have nightmares and suffer from insomnia. Zhu Qingjue asked again, Did you take the medicine on time? Yes. Zhu Qingjue nodded and explained again, You were once buried with silver needles in your acupoints. This is a secret technique that has been lost in Jianghu. The method is very sinister and cruel. Fortunately, you were treated by someone who removed all the poisonous needles and did not cause more harm. The reason why you can't remember some parts is because of the sequelae. It is very difficult to recover, but His Majesty ordered me to give you a few doses of strong medicine. If you can bear it, continue to take it. If you can't bear it, you'd better explain to His Majesty. Don't force yourself. Even if it was strong medicine, there would be no lack of side effects. His master was the medicine king of southern Miao, who specialized in treating the world's difficult and miscellaneous diseases. His method of treating and saving people was not gentle, especially when it came to the dosage. After drinking his medicine, it was normal for Jing Chen to suffer from insomnia and dreams in just a few days. This was only the first prescription. If he changed the prescription again, perhaps Jing Chen would suffer more. Zhu Qingjue was reminding Jing Chen out of kindness. However, Emperor Zhao Qing was determined to get clues from him. This illness was not something he could not treat even if he wanted to. Brother Zhu, don't worry. When I cultivate in the mountains, I often don't sleep or rest for 3 to 5 days. The symptoms right now are not serious. Zhu Qingjue stopped there and did not try to persuade him any further. She immediately checked his pulse and examined his condition, and then wrote a new prescription. She added a few more herbs to the original one. The drug was also very strange. It was made with 2 pieces of cicada skin ground into powder and sucked through the mouth and nose before taking the medicine. Take the medicine on time every day. After 3 days you may see results. Once you remember something, send someone to find me and I will help you. Don't delay. After reminding Jing Chen twice, Zhu Qingjue took his leave. He had no intention of chatting with Jing Chen. Jing Chen didn't urge him to stay. After thanking him, he had someone send him away. Later, he sent someone to the imperial physician's office to get the medicine according to the prescription. To Qin Xia had Yun. To say he Qin Xia Chen Wang Yu Yu Yuan Shu. Xia Jiangmin got up early in the morning to dress up. She changed her clothes several times in front of the mirror but was still not satisfied. She dawdled until Yu Shu came to her door. Then she chose a light yellow feather coat and dragged herself to the garden to meet her. The last time they met was at Jing Wang's wedding. After 10 days, when Yu Shu saw Xia Jiangmin again, there was a different kind of surprise. The married young lady took off her inexperienced outer clothes and added a bit of a charming charm to her. She wore a red hairpin and a tourmaline, and her entire body exuded a noble aura. She leisurely walked out from the sea of dazzling flowers, almost blinding people's eyes. Ushu. When Xia Jiangmin saw Yu Shu, she smiled happily and ran a few steps. A group of maids behind her hurried to catch up and whispered, "Wang Fei, be careful not to sprain your ankle." Hearing this, Xia Jiangmin resentfully dragged her overly long skirt as she walked step by step in front of Yu Shu. She was helped to sit down. She then looked Yu Shu up and down and sweetly said, "You haven't come to see me for so long. If I didn't send someone to invite you, would you have forgotten about me?" Yu Shu shook her head with a smile. Seeing her like this, she guessed that Lu Tan treated her very well. The two talked for a while before Xia Jiangmin shooed away the surrounding servants. She then intimately pulled Yu Shu's hand and shook it. She glanced at the crowd that had retreated to the distance and complained in a small voice, "It's so annoying. You have to follow me everywhere. I can't even leave the front door of the Wang Fu all day long." Yu Shu asked her, "Why doesn't Wang Yi allow you to go out?" She had the experience of running away from home once. Before she got married, for insurance, Xia Jianghe forbade his daughter to go out. Now that Xia Jiangmin had married into the Wang Fu, there was no reason for Lu Tan to be so strict with her. "That's not it," Xia Jiangmin hurriedly defended Lu Tan. "When Wang Yi is free, he also takes me out to relax. It's just that we sit in the carriage all the way and everywhere we go has to be cleared. It's really boring." Yu Shu suddenly understood. With Xia Jiangmin's lively and active personality, she really couldn't adapt to living a regular life. "Bear it, you'll get used to it. You don't know how many people envy your current life. It's not that you haven't suffered with me. You have everything you need. It's a blessing from your previous life." Even if Yu Shu had a way to take her out to have fun, she wouldn't encourage her. After all, her identity was different. As a Wang Fei, she couldn't do whatever she wanted. Lu Tan had unspeakable ambitions. She should restrain her temper. Otherwise, if one day she caused trouble and caused a gap between husband and wife, it would be harming her. As she said this, Xia Jiangmin couldn't help but recall the disaster on the river a year ago. They worked hard to get to the capital. They got up from dawn to dusk in the small courtyard on Huixing Street just to make a living. She sighed and felt emotional. She didn't have the mood to complain and turned to ask about Yu Shu's recent situation. There were some bad things that Yu Shu couldn't say to others, but she could tell her. For example, a while ago Madame Yin and Deng made trouble for her. She schemed to ruin her reputation, locked her in the room to burn the earth dragon, and forced her to take off her clothes to embarrass herself. Hearing this, Xia Jiangmin was angry. Because there were people in the distance, she could only scold in a low voice, "This evil woman, she's so vicious. She's just a 5th-level official's wife. Who does her son think he is? A toad wants to eat swan meat and he dares to dream of marrying you." Before Xia Jiangmin became a Wang Fei, she was the young miss of the Jiangnan Xiajiang family. Her father was the head of the family and her late grandmother was Princess Sheng, one of the Yin dynasty. Even though she didn't have an official position, she had a real name. The Xiajiang surname looked down on the thousands of guests in the south. The Xiajiang family had a wide range of connections. Xia Jiangmin had seen many officials and nobles since she was young. A 5th-grade official's wife, even in the past she wouldn't have paid any attention. My mother used to be a maid in her family. I can't blame her for looking down on me. I also blame myself for being careless and falling into her trap. Yu Shu reflected. Xia Jiangmin said hatefully, "You can't forgive her. She will think that you are easy to bully and come back to harm you. Think about it. If this thing gets out, how will you get married in the future?" Yu Shu thought, even if this didn't happen, it would be a problem for her to get married in this life. "I can't forgive her," Yu Shu told her about her personal revenge. "If she doesn't come to me to apologize, her children won't be able to marry in the future." She burned the marriage contract as a warning to let Madame Yin and Deng know that she was not to be trifled with. If she was smart, she would come to her early to apologize. If she didn't know what was good for her and wanted to fight with her, she didn't mind accompanying her to the end. That's how it should be, Xia Jiangmin clapped and cheered. At least she had vented her anger. Seeing the cold light in Yu Shu's eyes, she suddenly thought of a saying, "Evil people will be tortured by evil people." Ah, that's not right, Ashu isn't an evil person. Admiring the flowers and drinking, the two of them shared their worries. Finding out that Lu Tan wasn't coming back at noon, Yu Shu stayed for the noon meal. It was hard to avoid drinking a few cups of thick wine during the meal. After getting drunk, she rested at Xia Jiangmin's place for an afternoon nap. When she woke up in the afternoon, she drank a bowl of the special hangover soup of Jing Wang Fu. Then, under the reluctance of the beautiful Wang Fei, she left in high spirits. In the afternoon, before the sun had set, Baichuan Academy was dismissed. Yu Xiaoxiu went to He Fangji's medical shop to work as an apprentice while Bai Ran returned to the Fu alone. He didn't dare to forget Yu Shu's orders. From this month onwards he had to teach a Yahuan by her side how to read. Returning to the little young master's courtyard, Bai Ran took out the 3-character classic that he had previously copied out and placed it on the table. He also prepared the brush, ink, paper and inkstone. He heard that the little Yahuan could recognize a few words, so he planned to start teaching her from the basics and then move on step by step. Yu Shu said for him to casually teach her so he wouldn't really do it half-heartedly. Seeing that no one had come after 5 o'clock, he thought for a bit and got up to wait outside the door. A short while later he saw a petite figure running down the long corridor not far away, heading straight here. Bai Ran hadn't seen the Yahuan called Little Kuei before, so when she ran closer he asked, "Is it Little Kuei Gunyang?" Because Bei Kuei had some matters to attend to in the afternoon, she came late and ran all the way here. Suddenly she heard someone call Little Kuei. She looked over with a pair of large eyes and saw that under the old elm tree at the entrance of the young master's courtyard, there was a youth standing ramrod straight. In the next moment she stopped in her tracks and stared blankly at the faint green light that shrouded that person's fair forehead. Bai Ran saw that the other was standing foolishly with a pair of large round eyes, just like a frightened rabbit. He was baffled and couldn't help but walk 2 steps closer to ask again, "Excuse me, are you Little Kuei?" And Bei Kuei suddenly came back to her senses. She rubbed her eyes and stared at his forehead again and again to confirm that it was not her eyes that were playing tricks on her. This time, her heartbeat suddenly accelerated and she stuttered, I am Kuei. Are you Bai Ran Gij?" Bai Ran frowned, thinking that this little girl was so delicate and beautiful, but she turned out to be a stutterer. What a pity. Feeling sympathy in his heart, he couldn't help but soften his tone. He gently nodded and said to her, "I am Bai Ran. Eldest Miss asked me to teach you how to read and write. Come with me." After saying that he turned around and walked inside. And Bei Kuei followed him step by step. Her mind was full of the glimpse of the green light just now. She was born with yin and yang eyes. She could see the ghost light on the body of the dead. She could also see the spirit light of the living people who were about to die. From Dongyin to Daen before today she only saw a living person with a spirit light that didn't appear on the head, but shrouded in the eyebrows. Now she saw a second person. And Bei Kuei absent-mindedly studied with Bai Ran for an hour. It wasn't until Yu Xiaoxiu was about to return that Bai Ran assigned her homework and told her, "Let's stop here for today and come back tomorrow." Only then did she hurriedly leave. Bai Ran only thought that she was still young and playful, so he didn't think much about it. However, he didn't know that he had inadvertently exposed a shocking secret to others. And Bei Kuei ran all the way back to the North Palace. She bumped into Xener at the door and knew that Yushu had returned. Panting, she found her way to the upper room. "Master." Yushu was changing her clothes in the room. She took off her official robe and took off her black muslin hairpin. She was only wearing a white shirt and was sitting on the couch, letting Yun Do loosen her hair. She opened her collar and saw Bei Kuei barging in recklessly. Yun Do put on a straight face and scolded in a low voice, "Why didn't you knock?" The first rule of the North Palace was to knock on the door when entering and exiting, especially Yushu's bedroom and study. No one was allowed to enter without permission. After all, Yun Do had been a head maidservant for a few months. She was in charge of more than a dozen people and was getting more and more imposing. And Bei Kuei didn't talk back. She immediately knelt down and whispered to Yushu, "Master, please punish me later. I have something to report." Yushu wasn't angry. She took the comb and waved her hand to let Yun Do go see if dinner was delivered. After she left, only the master and servant were left in the room. And Bei Kuei didn't get up from her kneeling position. She knelt in front of Yushu and carefully said, "Master, I saw a person today. Just like you, there was a divine light on his forehead." Yushu was combing a lock of hair. Hearing this, she suddenly looked up, causing her scalp to go numb. Gritting her teeth, she pressed down on Bei Kuei's shoulder and asked her to look up. Her eyes lit up and she asked sternly, "Who? Where did you see him? God, did she really catch a fellow townsman?" Chapter 696. When Yushu first took Mbiki in, she learned from her that she was extraordinary, so she imagined that there might be someone in this world like her, who came from 500 years in the future. This thought made her feel both excited and worried. She was excited because as a foreigner, she could meet a fellow countryman. It really made her feel an indescribable excitement. She was worried because if the other person was not the same as her, then it was very likely that he would become a potential threat to her in this world. She had been secretly conflicted about this. Until now, when she confirmed the existence of such a person through Nbiki's special ability, she actually let out a sigh of relief. There was no other reason than that this fellow countryman was a servant she had bought from the Providers Institute. With such an identity, no matter what, he would not be able to make waves under her hands. This dispelled her unnecessary worry. The rest was purely the excitement of finding a fellow countryman. And Biki secretly looked at the shocked and happy expression on Yushu's face. She was very nervous and called out, "Master." Yushu came back to her senses and realized that she had been holding on to this child. She quickly let go of her hand and gently rubbed her shoulder. She said with a smile, "Well done, Biki. You should be rewarded. If there is anything you want, just say it." Only then did Biki relax. Hearing Yushu's praise, she smiled shyly and knelt at Yushu's feet. She shook her head and said sincerely, "This servant doesn't want anything as long as you are happy." If someone else said this, it would be hypocritical, but Yushu knew that it was difficult for Nbiki to maintain a pure heart. She said that she didn't want a reward because she had never wanted to take credit for it. She just wanted to please her. "How can that be? I have always been clear about rewards and punishments." Yushu patted her little head. After thinking for a moment, she touched the lanyard on her neck and took it off. It was a goose carved from white crystal. It was only the size of an almond and had the effect of helping people sleep. She had worn it for many days. And Bei Kuei watched as Yushu took off her undergarments and put them on her neck. She was flattered and hurriedly refused, "This servant doesn't dare." Yushu ignored her and smiled as she put the white crystal on her head. She said, "You have a pair of eyes more than anyone else in this world. You have to go through hardships that others can't even imagine. Wandering in a foreign land, alone in the dead of night, I'm afraid you will be sad and lonely. You won't know your future. This crystal goose was personally raised by me. I hope it will let you have a good dream and sleep well so that you won't be troubled by the past." These words were directed at Nbiki, but they also seemed like her monologue. The warm crystal pendant was pressed against her chest. In an instant, Nbiki's eyes welled up with tears. She had been hiding her deep fears for the past few days, but Yushu's words had exposed them. She felt endless sorrow. In an instant, she recalled many dark memories. Those unrecognizable corpses, those cruel training, and the days that made her so miserable that she wanted to die were gone forever. "Master, thank you, master." She choked with sobs and crawled at the feet of Yushu. Her gratitude was overflowing from her chest. Yushu let Nbiki hold the corner of her clothes and wiped her tears. There was a rare pity, but there was no impatience. Fortunately, Nbiki didn't dwell on it for too long. She stopped crying and looked up, waiting for her instructions. Yushu coughed and pulled the corner of her clothes out of her hands. She said, "Tell me, what did Byran teach you today?" Nbiki said, "He taught me to read the 3-character classic. He explained the meaning and recognized more than a dozen new words. He also said that I should copy the first few sentences 10 times and show it to him tomorrow. At that time he asked me to write it down from memory." Yushu nodded. Since she found Byran suspicious, she first had to confirm whether he came from the same place as her. The 3-character classic? Yushu thought for a while and came up with an idea. She naturally wouldn't come forward to discuss his origin with Byran, but she could let Nbiki test him first. "What did he teach you?" "At the beginning of man his nature is good. His nature is similar but his habits are different." She had just learned a few sentences not long ago. She recited them without any difficulty. Yushu nodded. "Well, Biki, I will give you a task. From tomorrow onwards you will go to Byran's place to study. Pay more attention to his words and actions. Later, when you go to see him tomorrow, he will ask you to write down your homework. Don't write it according to what he taught you. Come here, I will write it for you." After saying that, she got up and put on her shoes. She walked to the small window. She had a pen, ink, and paper in her bedroom so that she could write down some essays. Yushu took Nbiki to the table and asked her to grind the ink and paper. She wrote down the passages of 3-character classic she had just memorized, but she used simplified characters that were commonly used 500 years later. "Copy it and write it down when you go back at night." Nbiki didn't ask for the reason, nor was she curious why Yushu's writing looked different from what she had learned. She just copied it honestly. Yushu guided her to make sure that she didn't make any mistakes. Then Yushu burned the simplified characters she had written first into ashes. She opened the window to let in some fresh air and looked at the confused Abe Kue with a smile. "I don't need you to serve me here. Go and rest." Nbiki obediently retreated. Yushu walked around the room alone. She couldn't help but feel restless. It took her a while to calm down. She put on her coat and turned to the study. She was worried. She needed to burn incense to make a divination. She wanted to know whether Byran, the variable, was good or bad for her. When Lu Tan returned to the Wang Fu in the evening, he heard that Yushu would stay until the afternoon before leaving. Looking at Xia Jiangmin's good mood, he felt that his arrangement was not wrong. Not only could he make his lovely wife happy, he could also let Yushu maintain a close relationship with Jing Wang Fu. Xia Jiangmin was like a butterfly circling around Lu Tan. One moment she talked about how beautiful the chrysanthemums in the garden were, the next moment she talked about the jokes Yushu told her today. As for what Yushu had warned her not to mention in front of Lu Tan, she didn't say a single word. Lu Tan tasted the tea that she had personally brewed and casually asked, "I see that you and Lotus Fang Gunyang get along so well, but I've never heard you say when did you meet?" Xia Jiangmin instantly paused. Her eyes flashed twice and she pursed her lips as she sat next to him. She smiled and said, "Long ago I came to Jing to visit my Jia. At that time Lotus Fang was still an examinee. She set up a stall on the south street of the city to tell people's fortunes. I met her by chance. Because there weren't many friends or relatives in Jing, we kept in touch. After a while we became familiar." The fact that she had run away from home was purposely concealed by the Xiajiang family. This matter could not be known by Lu Tan. Luckily there were only a few people who knew. Yushu had already helped her secretly pass a message to Jing Qin. They wouldn't leak anything. So that's how it is. You two are fated. Lu Tan didn't seem to suspect anything. After accompanying her for a while, he went to the study in the outer yard to see his guests. After Lu Tan opened his fu, he recruited many knowledgeable people at the Shuangyang conference. A considerable portion of them didn't enter officialdom and became his guests. They were kept in another courtyard and provided food and drink. Every day they came to the outer yard to see him, discuss politics and give him advice. When Emperor Zhaoqing rewarded him, he bestowed 1,000 taels of gold and countless treasures. Imperial consort Shui also secretly gave him a few properties that she had previously sent people to manage in Jing. Other than that, there was also the assistance of the large and influential Shui family. Just the copper coins that Shui Lingnan sent into Jing Wang Fu were loaded with more than a dozen carts. This didn't even include the 10 li of red dowry that the Xiajiang family carried into Jing Wang Fu. Therefore, when Lu Tan, an imperial prince who had cultivated outside for many years, returned to Jing, he didn't lack money to spend. Therefore, it didn't take any effort to raise such a large group of idlers. Today's topic was on the topic of, what benefit does the flourishing of the Tao bring to the flourishing of the country? Lu Tan was in high spirits until the end of the topic. He was still unsatisfied. He sent away a group of hangers-on, turned around, and went to the south striding courtyard to look for his most trusted advisor, Helan Cho. When all was said and done, Lu Tan was only 17 years old. He was still young and always had some worries that he didn't have anyone to confide in. In the past, he had lived on Mount Longhu and didn't have many people to enlighten him. After returning to Jing, even though there were a few elders of virtue and prestige, he had to be cautious in his words and actions. Only Helan Cho, who was old enough and had experienced many hardships in life, had become Lu Tan's confidant. In the 10 years I spent on the mountain, everything I learned and saw was related to the Tao. At first, I thought it would be of no benefit to the affairs of the country. But after thinking about it, all things in this world are related to the word, reason. There is a Tao in governing a country and a Tao in being a person. Often, a sentence of Tao hides a great mystery that only needs to be unraveled. For example, in the Jingyi, there is a saying, upholding the Tao is benevolent and virtuous, Xuanzhen is restored to Taiha, utmost sincerity is declared in the Jade Code, loyalty and righteousness are performed in the Golden Section. Lu Tan vented his frustrations, and Helan Cho listened attentively from beginning to end. His eyes were filled with hope. He believed that this young prince, who was bold and decisive, already had the embryonic form of a wise ruler. After venting, Lu Tan finally felt carefree and relaxed. He calmed down and listened to Helan Cho's words of consolation. Finally, he suggested, ever since your highness returned to the capital, you have been buried in official business all day. You are too diligent and this has tortured your mind. If you have time, why don't you invite a few friends and relatives to go out and play? If you don't want to go too far, there are many good places in Jing. Hearing this, Lu Tan was interested and asked, Teacher, please tell me about it. The lookout pavilion on Jade Lion Lake, the concubine courtyard at the head of Shisi Bridge, and the ginger house in Apricot Rain Lane. Lu Tan frowned slightly. I have been to the lookout pavilion and the ginger house. Isn't the concubine courtyard a place to deal with criminals? What is there to go to? Helan Cho only smiled. Seeing that Lu Tan did not think much of it, he did not go into detail. There is a wonderful person hidden in there. Lu Tan noted down his words, then he changed the topic and said, we can go to the Hengwu mansion to relax. I haven't seen my cousin brother Shui Rue in private for a while, so I'll look for him first. Helan Cho secretly thought that Lu Tan's handling of matters was still lacking in slyness. His intelligence was sufficient, but he lacked vision and methods. The eldest young master of the Shui family was like a dragon in the clouds. If Lu Tan wanted to use him, it would not be so easy. As a result, Helan Cho suggested, why don't we invite Daozi to accompany us? The three of us will go together. Wouldn't that be perfect? Chapter 697. Lu Tan invited Shui Rue and Jing Chen to the Hengwu building to listen to the opera. The two did not decline and arranged a date. That evening, Lu Tan and Jing Chen arrived first and entered the Cypress and Pines building. Because there were only 3 of them, they did not bring anyone else, so they did not go up to the top floor. Instead, they asked for a private room on the 2nd floor, which could accommodate a small opera troupe. After listening to the short report, Shui Rue arrived late. He was ushered into the door by the imperial guard who was waiting downstairs. When he rolled up the curtain, he saw a female character in colorful clothes and a pink face standing on the short stage. She was swinging her sleeves lightly as she turned her head back to say something. Her entire body was elegant and beautiful, and her body was delicate and gentle. She was one of the most pitiful characters here, Du Qing'a. Shui Rue only glanced at her before withdrawing his gaze. On the other side, Lu Tan saw him walk in and put down his teacup. He smiled and said, Cousin, where did you come from? Shui Rue sighed and said truthfully, I was originally resting in the afternoon, but before I left, I was called by the Ministry of Justice to go to the Supreme Court to interrogate 2 important criminals. That is why I am late. Your Highness, please do not blame me. Although Lu Tan called him cousin, there was a difference between a ruler and a subject. Even though they were close, it was not to the point where there was no distinction between them. Therefore, Shui Rue had always treated Lu Tan in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing, neither distant nor close. Lu Tan waved his hand and did not blame him. Brother Shui. Jing Chen cupped his hands in greeting. Shui Rui nodded in return and sat down on the empty seat on the left of Lu Tan. On the stage was Du Qing's signature opera, Du Sherngyang. This was a famous song. It told the story of a famous prostitute in Jianghuai during the reign of Emperor Shizong. She met an unlucky man and committed suicide by drowning herself in the river. This story had been told for a long time. Because Du Qing'e had the same surname as the pitiful and respectable woman in the story, Sherngyang, and because she was both talented and beautiful, she became the #1 performer of Hangwu Hall. If it was not the children of the nobility who entered the chaste and cypress building, it would be very difficult for outsiders to listen to her song. Ever since Shui Rui entered the room, Du Qingyi's eyes would occasionally glance over. When she reached the end of her song, it was the most melancholic. If you don't know how to flirt, don't talk nonsense. Just the word love is a waste of effort. If you can understand the word love, you wouldn't be ashamed to call yourself a flirt. Lu Tan cast a glance at Shui Rui as if he had sensed something. When he saw that the latter's expression was the same as ever as he fanned himself and closed his eyes as if he was simply listening to the play, Lu Tan smiled to himself. He knew a thing or two about his cousin's scandals. As the saying goes, it's a waste of one's youth if one is not romantic. Just by relying on his good looks, he had attracted the tears of countless beauties. It was a pity that the falling flowers yearn for love, but the heartless water flows. Now it seemed that Shui Rui had restrained his temper, but he didn't know if it was for the late 10th princess or if there was another reason. After Du Sherngyang was sung, it was time for the next play. The people on stage prepared while the audience chatted. Recently, there has been a lot of noise in the morning court about attacking Wei country. Father is hesitating. Grandfather's intention is to transfer troops from Liangjiang. Cousin, what do you think? Lu Tan turned his body and asked. After the Land and Water Conference, Emperor Zhaoqing wanted to send troops to Dongying. Because of the question of whether to fight or not, all the parties and sects argued in the court for half a month. Finally, they decided to fight, but they were in a dilemma about who to send and who to lead the troops. Since Emperor Zhaoqing succeeded the throne, he hadn't taken the initiative to mobilize troops for more than 10 years. This was the first time. So from the emperor down to the civil and military officials, they all treated it with caution. First of all, in the eyes of most people, with Daan's vast national power, subduing a small island country was a piece of cake. This military achievement of opening up new territories was practically free. So there were many boorish people who wanted to lead the troops on an expedition. On the other hand, some people suggested that it would be better to let Lord Dongjing, who was guarding the north, send troops nearby. Firstly, it was close and could reduce losses. Secondly, Lord Dongjing had a well-trained navy under him which could be put to good use. It was fine to let Lord Dongjing send troops, but this suggestion of letting Lord Dongjing send troops was immediately fiercely opposed by some people in the court. There were various reasons. Some people thought that the Jiang family was already a noble. If they let Lord Dongjing make the merit of opening up new territories, it would be too much of a disadvantage. Some people were worried about the Mongols in the north, who were eager to make trouble in recent years. They were afraid that the Northeast Army would split up to attack Wei country. At that time, the Mongols would attack on a large scale, and the garrison in the north would be defeated. Both of these concerns were reasonable. The court was noisy all day and Emperor Zhaoqing was annoyed. Every day when he met with close officials in the upper study room, he would complain. The princes were all old enough to discuss politics. Prince Ning had been released from house arrest a while ago and had a seat in the upper study room again, so he had some say. However, Lu Tan was young and weak, so he did not dare to make a rash proposal. Lu Tan was not convinced, but he could not find out the truth from Xuelingnan's words. So he settled for the next best thing, which was to dig out political opinions from Shui Rui. Shui Rui looked at Lu Tan's inquisitive expression and confirmed that he did not know about his relationship with Jiang Huaying. Then he slowly fanned the Mujiang fan in his hand and said, "Hundreds of years ago, when the Tang Empire was ruling, there were Beech, Silla, and Goguryeo on the other side of the East Sea. Beech once invaded Silla, and the Tang Empire sent troops to help, but Beech was defeated. According to historical records, after Beech was defeated, they turned to Neon for help. So, Neon and Beech joined forces and gathered troops to go to the mouth of the Bai River to fight the Tang army. In the end, Neon and Beech were defeated and Beech was destroyed. This is the only time in history that the Central Plains fought with Neon. Although the Han won, it was Beech who destroyed the country. Now, Silla no longer exists. Only Neon still exists in the world after several generations, and it has developed great ambitions. Your Highness, do you think that sending troops across the sea to attack Dongying is really an easy task? Lu Tan was deep in thought. He seemed to have gained some inspiration from Shui Rui's words. Before he could understand, he heard Shui Rui say something meaningful. The peace of a country will lead to laziness after a long time. War is a must, but it is not the right time. Lu Tan almost blurted out, if it is not the right time now, then when will it be? Hee. Shui Rui suddenly put away his serious expression. He twirled his fan and said to himself, it is my shallow opinion. Your Highness, you can just listen to it. There is no need to take it seriously. Lu Tan was puzzled in his heart, but he didn't want to reveal himself in front of Shui Rui, so he smiled and changed the topic. Cousin brother's fan has distinct muscles and bones. I can tell with a single glance that it's not an ordinary object. May I know where you got it from? Shui Rui curled up the corner of his mouth and said, it was a gift from someone. It is my beloved object. Jing Chen had been listening quietly. He glanced at the amethyst fan pendant hanging at the end of the fan handle in Shui Rui's hand and suddenly said, is it a gift from Xiaoyu? Shui Rui looked back at him and the smile on his face disappeared. He nodded and said, it is a birthday gift from her. She said it can drive away evil spirits. Jing Chen saw that Shui Rui loved the fan so much that he could not put it down. His 5 senses were very sensitive, so he could naturally sense that the Yangwu qi on the fan was very thick. It was a treasure. Jing Chen's feelings toward Shui Rui were a little complicated. On one hand, he was Yu Shu's trusted big brother. Jing Chen was grateful to him for taking care of Yu Shu. On the other hand, Jing Chen could not help but be afraid of him. This person knew everything about them, and he had also seen Yin Hua. He was not sure if he could keep this secret. If he leaked something or had bad intentions, the first person to suffer would be Yu Shu. She cares a lot about you, her big brother? Jing Chen said in his heart, so you must not let her down. Shui Rui raised his eyebrows. He wanted to say something, but because of Lu Tan's presence he held back. He thought, she also cares a lot about you, but you let her down. In the end he only replied, I know. How can I not understand her kindness? Lu Tan could not understand the two of them talking in riddles. Since he mentioned Yu Shu, he brought the topic to her and said, speaking of which, Miss Lotus Room has been in Kunling Bureau for 3 months. When she passes the assessment, she can go to the court to discuss politics. At that time we must congratulate her properly. As Yu Shu's direct superior, Jing Chen had a lot of say. Today the Grand Commissioner asked me about Yu Shu's tenure. Her assessment should be arranged in the next few days. The assessment of Kunling Bureau was divided into 2 parts. The Grand Commissioner personally presided over the chief officers of the 3 departments and 2 bureaus. Tai Ching-si supervised from the side. The rest was the responsibility of the chief officers of each department. Tai Ching-si retained the right to report to avoid favoritism. Yu Shu had officially taken up her post the day before the aquatic conference. It had been almost 3 months and she was about to undergo her first evaluation as an official, as well as the most important one. This was related to whether or not she could continue to stay in her current position, as well as obtain the right to discuss politics in the royal court. Going to the court to meet the emperor and participating in state affairs was the threshold of an official's career. Many officials worked hard for their entire lives, but stopped at the Meridian Gate and never got a chance. Only by taking this step would there be greater opportunities, and only then would they be able to fight for greater power. There shouldn't be any problems, Lu Tan said. Youngest martial aunt is serving as a Shaoqing in Tai Ching-si. We are all on the same side. If there are no accidents, she will pass the assessment. On the same side, ha. Only Lu Tan, who didn't know the truth, could say this. Jing Chen and Shui Rui looked at each other, each worried. Jing Chen suspected that Shui Yun was deliberately targeting Yu Shu. Shui Rui knew how much Yu Shu disliked Jing Chen's junior sister. As they spoke, the stage was set up. The next play was a martial arts play called Wanderer. Lu Tan liked it. The martial artist came up and performed a set of sword techniques. Lu Tan raised his hand and rewarded him with an ingot of gold. Shui Rui watched for a while and found an excuse to leave. Jing Chen was even less interested in these showy but impractical moves, and also went outside to get some fresh air. The two of them went to the bridge between Pines and Cypress's house and Fragrant Grass House. The bright moon was in the sky. A sudden burst of cheers came from the opposite building, causing the two of them to look sideways. It sounded like someone was telling a story in the hall. Shui Rui and Jing Chen originally had nothing to say, but Jing Chen had good hearing. He tilted his head and listened for a moment. He smiled and turned back, saying, He's telling a story about the Aquatic and Land Conference. It's about little you cleverly breaking the Donging envoy's trick and summoning the wind and rain outside Fengqing Palace. As soon as he finished, his expression changed and he frowned. Without waiting for Shui Rui to speak, he turned around and strode toward the opposite building. Shui Rui was bewildered by this sudden action of his, and he hesitated for a moment before choosing to follow up. After passing through layers of soundproof curtains, the lights in front of them were brightly lit. The two of them walked to the corridor on the second floor. Before they stood still, they heard an ear-piercing voice shouting impudently in the midst of the noise downstairs. Chapter 698. The Water and Continent Meet was first told by Hung Wu Mansion, and its popularity hadn't died down yet. The story wasn't long either, so the Fragrant Grass Pavilion would arrange a story every few days, with a storyteller telling the story to warm up the scene. Everyone was listening excitedly, and the storyteller on the stage was describing and praising the main character of the story, the wise and brave female messenger Miao Ling, who had an extraordinary background. Suddenly someone stood up and scolded him. The hall was in a mess. Yin Yuanbua, who was sitting in the front row, stepped on a chair with the smell of alcohol. He slammed the teacup in his hand on the table and shouted, "You didn't hear me clearly? Then I'll say it again. What bullsh***t female fortune teller, female immortal. She's just a shameless, licentious, stinky woman." Yin Yuanbua looked around and found that every guest in the hall was looking at him. Many people were pointing at him and soon someone recognized him. "Hey, isn't this Third Master Yin? Are you drunk? Why are you here to act like a drunkard? I say, Third Master Yin, you can't say things like that. She's a pure and innocent woman. How can you slander her like this?" Yin Yuanbua's eyes darted around, but he couldn't figure out which one of them was sent by Prince Ning to act with him. He spat on the ground and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Innocent my ass. I'll let you know that the female immortal you're talking about was born by my family's servant. A few days ago my mother had a birthday party, and we invited her and her mother. Who would have thought that she would come to my house and find out that my cousin Yin Yuanrong was also in the mansion? She took off her clothes in the wing room in the backyard and tempted my third cousin to go there. Seeing her naked, if I hadn't followed her, I would have been blamed by her. I saw it with my own eyes. If I lie to you, I'll kill my parents." His spittle flew everywhere as he spoke. Although his last curse was disrespectful to his parents, there was a group of people who believed him immediately. They all started talking at once, and there were a few lechers who winked at him and said some vulgar things. For a moment Yin Yuanbua felt very happy. He felt that he had avenged his mother and smeared Yin Yuanrong's face again. But he still felt that it was not enough. "If you don't believe me, I'll tell you. That Yu Lianfang took off her clothes and there was a red mole on her left breast. I saw it very clearly." Shut up." Yin Yuanbua paused and subconsciously turned his head. A white light flashed in front of his eyes. Something flew past his head and exploded on the table behind him. Bang! The sound of something breaking could be heard. Yin Yuanbua's head was a little dizzy, and it took him a moment to realize that someone had smashed his head with a cup upstairs. The next moment he cried out in shock and covered his head. He lost his balance and tumbled down from the chair. "Plot. Which bastard plotted against your grandpa?" Yin Yuanbua was shocked. He wiped the blood from his forehead, and his face turned pale in an instant. The bustling Fragrant Grass Pavilion was now unusually quiet. When everyone saw Yin Yuanbua's disheveled appearance, they all looked up at the second floor. On the second floor, Jing Qin turned around to look at Shui Rui in astonishment. He'd just spoken out to stop Shui Rui, yet Shui Rui didn't say a word and actually directly grabbed the tea set of the customer beside him and smashed the customer's head. There was a distance between the second and the first floor, but it was obvious how much strength Shui Rui had used to hit someone's head so accurately and ruthlessly. Shui Rui's expression was as cold as frost. He was still holding a fan in one hand. He lifted his robe, turned around and strode down the stairs. Jing Qin was stunned for a moment, so he fell behind. Some people had already recognized Shui Rui, but they did not dare to make a sound. The visitors in the hall consciously made way for him. Only Yin Yuanbua did not know who had smashed his head. He sat on the ground and cursed, trying to get up. Shui Rui quickly walked in front of Yin Yuanbua. Without saying a word, he stretched out his leg and stepped on Yin Yuanbua's shoulder. Yin Yuanbua, who was about to get up, fell back to the ground with his limbs facing the sky. Yin Yuanbua let out a muffled groan and broke out in cold sweat from the pain. He lay on the ground in a daze. When he opened his eyes, he saw a familiar face. You, it's you? Shui Rui was so angry that he laughed. I was the one who smashed your head. What are you going to do about it? He only regretted that he did not stop him in time and shut this bastard's mouth, allowing him to insult his sweetheart in such an unclear manner. Yin Yuanbua's face alternated between red and white. He relied on the fact that he was the grandson of the Yin clan and was used to acting like a tyrant in the outside world. There were very few people in the capital city that he would be afraid of, and Shui Rui before him was one of them. He was the eldest son of Prime Minister Shui's residence. He was someone who was as famous as his third cousin Yin Yuanrong, whom he envied and was jealous of. He knew that he could not provoke him, but he was not willing to be beaten for nothing. Shui Qingbi, don't go too far. Yin Yuanbua shouted at Shui Rui without confidence. You are an official of the imperial court, but you still hurt someone. You broke the law knowingly. Do you believe that I will not report you to the Supreme Court? Shui Rui calmly pulled over a chair and sat down politely. He opened his fan with a swoosh and waved it lightly as he looked at him coldly. You do not have any scholarly rank, but you insulted an official of the imperial court in public. Based on your crime, you should be punished with 50 strokes of the cane. I am the junior minister of the Supreme Court and have the authority to punish you. Beating you to death is justified. The authority of the Supreme Court was higher than that of the Ministry of Justice. If the Ministry of Justice and the Yamen were to deal with the common people, then the Supreme Court was to deal with the aristocrats. Yin Yuanbua was scared when he heard this. He shivered and turned around trying to crawl away. He could not afford to offend him, but he could hide. But the moment he moved, Shui Rui stretched out his long leg and kicked his calf, causing him to fall to the ground again. I haven't finished speaking. Where do you think you are going? Shui Rui's kick was very heavy. Yin Yuanbua felt that the bones in his leg were about to break. He was in so much pain that tears came out. He hugged his leg and screamed. Someone come. Murder. Go and report it to the officials. Help. Shui Rui did not blink and kicked his buttocks again. Shut up. If you dare to move again, I will break your leg. Yin Yuanbua was in so much pain that he convulsed. He had never suffered such a loss before. He was so scared that he did not dare to move again. He lay on the ground and whimpered. Seeing his useless appearance, someone could not help but sneer. There were also some who saw that the situation was not good and wanted to take advantage of the chaos to sneak out. Shui Rui glanced at them from the corner of his eyes and turned around to instruct Jing Qin. Brother Jing, please don't let anyone leave before the matter is cleared up. Jing Qin nodded. He was also angry that the man had slandered Yu Shu. But he knew that he could not compare to Shui Rui in dealing with things, so he listened to his orders. He frowned at the man on the ground and turned to guard the stairs and the door. With his ability, there were hundreds of guests here. Unless they could fly, none of them would be able to escape under his watch. Third Master Yin, right? Shui Rui wasn't familiar with Yin Yuanbua. He only recognized that Yin Yuanbua was a young master of the Yin clan, and he was the cousin of that bastard Yin Yuanrong, yet he was unable to recall Yin Yuanbua's name. Let me ask you, why did you slander an official of the imperial court? Does official Yu of the Celestial Commissioner have a grudge against you? Although Shui Rui was angry, he still had his reason. Today's farce was obviously deliberately arranged by someone. If Yin Yuanbua's words spread, whether it was true or not, Yu Shu's reputation would be in danger and the other party's goal would be achieved. With so many people here, it was impossible to shut their mouths and stop them from talking nonsense. So the most important thing now was to change the topic before the rumors spread. Yin Yuanbua was a stubborn person. Even though his head was bleeding, he still stubbornly said, How did I slander her? I'm telling the truth. I can swear. If you don't believe me, you can ask my cousin to verify it. Let's see if I'm lying or it's true. He wanted to get away as soon as possible, but he refused to change his words. He thought that Shui Rui would let him go if he said that. Unexpectedly, Shui Rui sneered and raised his voice. Where's the steward? Very quickly someone ran forward. In fact, there was a steward on every floor of the fragrant grass pavilion. Just now the incident was too sudden. When Shui Rui showed up, the steward selectively pretended to be deaf and mute. Now that he was called, he stood up. Lord Shui, this lowly one is Sun Wu. Sun Wu, send someone to the neighboring street to find third young Master Yin and tell him about the situation here. He can decide whether to come or not. Shui Rui was very clear about Yin Yuanrong's character. He wouldn't be at home at this time of night. He must be having fun in the red light district. There were more than 10 brothels on the neighboring street. It was said that there was a new courtesan there. Yin Yuanrong was most likely there at this time. Ah, this lowly one will go now. Sun Wu agreed and ran away like a wisp of smoke. Yin Yuanbo, who was lying on the ground, was dumbfounded. He only said it casually, but why did Shui Rui really go to find someone? He felt guilty for a moment. He comforted himself, what's there to be afraid of? I didn't say anything false. At most, I'm just exaggerating. On the other hand, Shui Rui concluded that Yin Yuanbo was bullshitting. Not to mention anything else, just based on the last point, he had once taken advantage of a beautiful woman. How could he not know whether there was a mole on Yushu's chest? However, this matter couldn't be verified. After all, he couldn't let Yushu take off her clothes and let others examine her body. The more Shui Rui thought about it, the more annoyed he became. Looking at Yin Yuanbo, who was smeared with blood on the ground, he felt that Yin Yuanbo was wretched and hateful. When he came back to his senses, he kicked him again. Yin Yuanbo cried out in pain. Tears welled up in his eyes. He looked at Shui Rui with hatred and grievance. How could he not move? He had to be kicked. He shouldn't be like this. He looked around in fear, trying to find Prince Ning's subordinates to save him. However, after looking around, he couldn't tell who was on his side. Shui Rui stood up and cupped his hands in front of his chest. He said apologetically, "Please forgive me. What happened today concerns the reputation of the imperial court. Please don't leave until you get to the bottom of it." The people who came here to spend money were all people who had free time, and they were just here to watch a good show. Even if Shui Rui didn't say anything, there wouldn't be many people who wanted to leave, but since Shui Rui was so courteous, they still felt good in their hearts. In this way, no one wanted to leave. The group of people accompanied Shui Rui until Sun Wu ran in from outside, panting. He's here, he's here. The third Master Yin is here. As soon as he finished speaking, the real third Master Yin, who was wearing a flashy pink tunic and waving a paper fan, swaggered in from the door. Chapter 699. Shui Rui and Yin Yuanrong were the eldest grandson of the right Prime Minister and the eldest grandson of the left Prime Minister. Because they were of similar age, they were often compared to each other ever since they entered school. In addition, Zhu Qingjue, the only son of the Prime Minister, was a young talent from illustrious families. In the end, one became a civil official, the other a military general, and the other went to the Imperial Academy of Medicine. Shui Rui and Zhu Qingjue did not see eye to eye with each other and did not have a good relationship with Yin Yuanrong. There was no other reason but that when they were young and impetuous, they both loved romantic pursuits and beauties. It was inevitable that they would bump into each other. When one won the favor of a beauty, the other was naturally dissatisfied. A quarter of an hour ago, Yin Yuanrong was in the brothel trying to curry favor with the newly promoted courtesan queen. He was extremely unhappy when he was disturbed, but when he heard the whole story, he immediately abandoned the beauty and rushed over. On the way here, he asked about the cause of the incident in detail. When he entered the fragrant grass pavilion and saw Yin Yuanbo lying at Shui Rui's feet with his face covered in blood, he did not feel angry that his own family had been bullied. Instead, he cursed inwardly, "You can't do anything right, yet you dare to scheme against me." Speaking of which, Yin Yuanrong did not take it to heart when he saw Yushu's disheveled appearance at the assistant minister's residence that day. He had encountered this kind of situation many times. The girl did not ask him to take responsibility, so he would not look for trouble. If Yin Yuanbo had not revealed this matter, he would have almost forgotten about it. Brother Yuanrong. When Yin Yuanbo saw Yin Yuanrong, it was as if he had seen a life-saving straw. "You're finally here. Great young Master Shui wants to sue me for insulting an official of the imperial court, but I didn't. You have to testify for me. I didn't lie to slander that Yu Lianfang. She was the one who behaved inappropriately. Tell me, on my mother's birthday, did Yu Lianfang take off her clothes in my family's wing room and let us see her?" He was not good at reading other people's expressions and thought that Yin Yuanrong would not watch him suffer. However, he did not see that third Master Yin wanted to stuff his mouth with feces. This time, Shui Rui did not stop Yin Yuanbo's nonsense. After he finished complaining, he said to Yin Yuanrong, "Today, I happened to come to the opera and saw your younger brother spouting nonsense in public, slandering the officials of the imperial court." His words were vulgar, and the victim was the female imperial official of the Imperial Celestial Bureau, Yu Shu, a fifth-rank official who was appointed by His Majesty as the female envoy of Miaoling. This matter was of great importance. However, I saw and heard it with my own eyes, so I arrested him on the spot. Didn't expect that he would not repent. Yuanqiu. And he did, Yuan Minister, Minister, Emperor Minister, Minister. Shui Rui avoided the main point and dwelled on the trivial. With just a few sentences, he made the audience's attention shift from female emissary Miao Ling is a woman with loose manners to Yin clan's young master is slandering an official of the imperial court. Yin master family Yudo minister Yang to Yin master Yin Iman Yin Yuan Yin was to minister to minister Yen. He was flirtatious but not vulgar. Sure enough, Yin Yuanrong frowned after he finished speaking and pretended to be ignorant. He shook his head and said, I'm really muddle-headed. I've only heard of the Miss you guys are talking about, but I've never seen her. Shui Rui's eyes flickered as he nodded and said, that makes things easier. It seems like young Master Yin made it up. Yin Yuanbo was dumbfounded. He couldn't understand why Yin Yuanrong would lie through his teeth. Instead of helping his own brother, he was defending an outsider. Brother Yuanrong, think about it carefully. How could you have never seen her before? Yin Yuanbo hurriedly got up and wiped the blood off his face. That day when you and I were together, both of us saw it. She was the one who deliberately seduced you, did you forget? Shui Rui was almost amused by him when he heard this. The grandchildren of Minister Yin are really a mix of good and bad. At any rate, Yin Yuanrong has a brain, yet this person on the ground is stupid to the point of being comparable to a pig. If Yin Yuanrong really did see Yushu in a daze, what good would it do him? He would just make an enemy and smear his own reputation. Would Yin Yuanrong disregard everything just to save his younger cousin who used him as a laughingstock? It was obvious that Third Master Yin wasn't a true gentleman who repaid evil with good. It was already good enough that he didn't hit him when he was down. Yuanbo, did you drink too much? Are you talking nonsense? Yin Yuanrong was good at playing dumb. He glared at him with an unhappy expression. I'll say it again, I don't know that Yu Lianfang. I've never seen her before. Who knows if she's round or flat? Yin Yuanbo finally understood that Yin Yuanrong wouldn't help him. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He could only keep talking. With his bloody face, he looked like he was possessed. You've clearly seen her before, you've clearly seen her before? The people around them didn't feel sympathy for him. Instead, they all felt disdain and vaguely displeased. What was going on? It was all a lie. Yin Yuanrong sighed heavily, and then he cupped his hands to Shui Rui and said, Brother Shui Yuanbo is my cousin brother. Even though he was in the wrong first, I can't stand by idly. I think he drank too much and spoke rudely in a moment of confusion. You're a magnanimous person. Don't argue with him. Otherwise, let's forget about today's matter. I'll send him home later and ask my second uncle to discipline him strictly so he won't come out and cause trouble again. What do you think? At the end of the day, they were all from the Yin family. If Yin Yuanbo was arrested and sent to the Supreme Court for slandering an official of the imperial court, it would be the Yin family's reputation that would be ruined. Yin Yuanrong could watch him die, but he couldn't let him ruin his family's reputation. Therefore, when he heard that something had happened to Hung Wu Building, he rushed over eagerly. He didn't even want the beauty lying by his pillow. Yin Yuanrong had thought it through. He had cooperated with Shui Rui previously. Now that he had given in, Shui Rui should let Yin Yuanbo off. Who knew that Shui Rui had no intention of letting the matter rest. He was really angry today. Otherwise, Yin Yuanbo wouldn't have seen blood from that cup. From the moment he made his move, he didn't think that he would be able to get away with it. Brother Yin, you don't have to blame yourself. This matter has nothing to do with you. You're also innocent and implicated. Shui Rui closed his Mujiang fan and stood up. He glanced at Yin Yuanbo, who was still lying on the ground. He turned to meet Yin Yuanrong's gaze and cupped his hands. The Supreme Court has never been biased when investigating cases. It's true that Yin Yuanbo slandered an official of the imperial court in public. I want to bring him back to the Supreme Court to be sentenced. Sorry for offending you. With that, he put the fan into his bosom and nodded towards a corner on the second floor. He then picked up Yin Yuanbo, who was on the ground, and flicked the numbing acupoint on the back of his neck before Yin Yuanbo could struggle. He dragged Yin Yuanbo toward the door. Today, at Lu Tan's invitation, Shui Rui only brought 2 attendants with him. They were waiting outside Hung Wu Building. He couldn't wait to call them in and personally took Yin Yuanbo away. Yin Yuanrong's expression became utterly unsightly when he saw this scene. He hesitated and didn't stop Shui Rui because he understood Shui Rui's character. If Yin Yuanrong were to stop Shui Rui, then Shui Rui might drag Shui Rui into the Supreme Court as well. Shui Rui walked to the door and paused. He said to Jing Qin, I'll go first. What about you? Jing Qin said, I'll go with you. On the second floor, Lu Tan, who had been standing in the dark and watching the commotion for a while, saw Shui Rui and Jing Qin leave together. He stood there thoughtfully for a while, then turned and returned to Chaste and Cypress Building. Today's incident was not a coincidence. Yin Yuanbo slandered Yushu. There was definitely someone behind it. What was the purpose of that person? Was it purely to ruin Yushu's reputation? Shui Rui brought Yin Yuanbo back to the Supreme Court. He didn't wait until the next day and interrogated him that very night. Jing Chen listened on the side and didn't leave. Who ordered you to slander the Celestial Commissioner's female imperial official, Yushu? Today's scene in Hengwu Building and Fragrant Grass Pavilion was obviously deliberately arranged by someone. Someone in the crowd echoed Yin Yuanbo's words, intending to ruin Yushu's reputation. Yin Yuanbo didn't have the brains, so who could it be? Shui Rui swiftly went through them in his heart, and he had a few candidates. Thus, even though Yin Yuanbo intentionally concealed it, he was unable to avoid Shui Rui's repeated questioning, and merely the expression on Yin Yuanbo's face was able to allow Shui Rui to confirm that it was the mastermind. Unsurprisingly, it was Ningguang Lu Hao. Shui Rui wasn't as angry as imagined. He calmly analyzed Ningguang's thoughts and came to a conclusion. Ningguang plotted against Yushu not just to ruin Yushu's reputation. In the case of the headless imperial envoy, Ningguang tried to assassinate Yushu because he was wary of Yushu's ability to determine a person's life and death. He was worried that the truth of the 10th princess's death would be calculated by her, so his first thought was to silence her. In the end, he didn't succeed. Ningguang was instead harmed and was involved in this murder case. He was grounded by Emperor Zhao Qin. One plan didn't work, but Ningguang didn't give up. He had another plan. Since he couldn't kill Yushu, he had to think of a way to subdue her. Thinking about it, if Lu Tan hadn't had the interest to invite them to Hengwu Building to watch the show today, and they hadn't been able to stop this farce, Yin Yuanbo could have successfully spread the rumor to the point where everyone knew that Yushu had tried to seduce Yin Yuanrong. At that time, Yushu wouldn't have any innocence to speak of. Ningguang only needed to convince Yin Yuanrong to marry Yushu, and maybe ask the emperor to appoint a marriage. Then a scandal would become a happy event. Yushu was in a dilemma. She couldn't resist the imperial decree and could only agree. Yin Yuanrong had married a foreign a long time ago, but she had died of illness 2 years ago. The Yin family might not want Yushu as a daughter-in-law, but if Yin Yuanrong insisted, she could be his second wife. The Yin family was Ningguang's outer family. In order to help him obtain the throne, it wasn't difficult for them to make this little concession. When Yushu became Yin Yuanrong's wife, Lu Hao's goal would be achieved. After Shui Rui thought it through, the anger in his heart calmed down a lot. Ningguang had calculated everything, but he hadn't calculated that Yushu had a special identity. It was destined that she couldn't marry anyone casually, and it was even more impossible for her to become the daughter-in-law of the Yin family. Thinking of this, he suddenly sighed with some bitterness. If others couldn't get her, how could he be with her openly? Brother Shui, did you find out? Who was the one who ordered him to slander Xiaoyu? Jing Chen wasn't as knowledgeable as Shui Rui. After listening for a while in confusion, he still didn't know who the culprit was. Shui Rui was vexed and didn't intend to explain much to Jing Chen. He looked coldly at Yin Yuanbo, who was lying in a ball on the ground. Holding the red brush, he lightly ticked on the confession he had recorded and said to the official, "Note Yin Yuanbo, a member of the gentry, slandered an official of the court in public. After this official found out, according to the criminal law, he will be punished with 50 strokes of the rod, immediately. 50 strokes of the rod, not one less. It was definitely a severe punishment." Hearing this, Yin Yuanbo shuddered. Evil rose from the bottom of his heart and he yelled at Shui Rui, "Shui Dalong! How dare you! My grandfather is the current prime minister, and my father is the assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue. You deliberately wanted to kill me. If something happened to me, they would never forgive you." Shui Rui was unmoved. A cold smile floated on his lips and he said, "Don't worry, I won't beat you to death." Chapter 700. Yin Yuanrong couldn't stop Shui Rui from taking Yin Yuanbo away, nor could he go back to his gentle home as if nothing had happened. After Shui Rui and Jing Chen left, he hurried to his second uncle's assistant minister's mansion. Yin Zhorong and his wife were asleep. Hearing the announcement outside, Assistant Minister Yin asked someone to come in and light the lamp. Yin Dengshi sat up unhappily and muttered, "It's midnight. What's so important that it can't wait until tomorrow?" Yin Zhorong said, "You don't need to get up. Go back to sleep. I'll go see what happened to Yuanrong." At this time, the steward on night duty outside the door leaned against the window and said anxiously, "Master, madam, get up quickly. It seems that something happened to the third young master and he was taken away by the officials." What? Ian Dengshire suddenly woke up. In less than 10 minutes, the couple finished cleaning up and rushed to the front yard one after the other. They saw Ian Yuanrong and listened to him briefly explain the situation. Yuanbo drank too much in Hengwu Mansion and said some nonsense in public. He insulted a female official of the Celestial Commissioner and was seen by the Shaoqing of the Supreme Court, Shui Rui. He concluded that he insulted an official and despised the court, so he took him to the Supreme Court for interrogation. He was very careful in what he said. He didn't mention the details and drew a clear line to avoid being entangled in the current situation. Ian Dengshire was furious when she heard this, but it wasn't because Ian Yuanbo had caused trouble outside. How can he arrest someone just because he said so? Is there any law? Ian Yuanrong secretly rolled his eyes and thought that a loving mother would spoil her son. Ian Yuanbo had become an ignorant and incompetent bastard, all thanks to his second aunt. What was the law? As the junior chancellor of the Supreme Court, Shui Rui did indeed have the authority to issue punishments. It was perfectly justifiable for him to arrest someone. This time Ian Yuanbo fell into Shui Rui's hands. "Yuanrong, he is your younger brother. Are you going to watch him be arrested and not do anything?" Ian Dengshire was so angry that she didn't choose her words carefully. "Alright, stop talking." Ian Zhorong was the one who kept his composure. He stopped his wife, who was getting angry at Ian Yuanrong, and apologized to Ian Yuanrong. "Your second aunt is confused. Don't listen to her nonsense. You said that Yuanbo was taken to the Supreme Court by the Shui family. How long ago was it?" Ian Yuanrong didn't take Ian Deng seriously at all, so he didn't argue with her. Facing Ian Zhorong, who could still keep his composure, he kindly reminded him, "Around an hour has passed. Second uncle, quickly follow me to the Supreme Court of Justice to look for him. If we delay for too long, then I'm afraid Yuanbo will suffer." How could Shui Rui be easy to deal with? Uncharacteristically, Shui Rui didn't give him any face at all and took Ian Yuanbo away with an unyielding attitude. Ian Yuanrong knew that the situation wasn't good, and there was an 80% chance that Ian Yuanbo had already been tortured. Ian Dengshire Deng hurriedly said, "Zhorong, Master Yuanbo, Yuanrong, send someone to the Prime Minister's mansion and ask Father to help. No matter what, Yuanbo must be brought back. How can he stay in a place like the Supreme Court?" "Nonsense," Ian Zhorong glared at her. "It's just a small matter. It's not good to disturb Father. Wait at home and don't make trouble for me." Then he turned and ordered the servants to prepare horses. He didn't even set up a carriage and rushed to the Supreme Court's yamen with Ian Yuanrong. However, they were too late in the end. Ian Yuanbo had already received the full 50 strokes of the cane and was beaten half to death. Shui Rui threw him into the prison that was temporarily used to hold suspects. After dealing with this matter, Shui Rui didn't leave. He knew that Ian Yuanrong wouldn't leave, so he waited for people to come to him. Ian Zhorong was polite and bowed to Shui Rui, who was of the same rank as him, and said, "Lord Shui, may I ask where my son is now? Can I see him for a moment?" He didn't mention Ian Yuanbo's mistake because he wanted to see him first, ask about the cause and effect, and then think of a way to get his son out. Shui Rui was also very polite and returned the greeting. He glanced at Ian Yuanrong, who was in the background, and said sternly, "Your son has publicly fabricated rumors and framed officials of the imperial court. He has already pleaded guilty. Moreover, he doesn't have any scholarly honors, so his crime is even more serious. I've already given him 50 strokes and put him in prison. He can only be released after a month. If Lord Ian wants to see him, go to the yamen to register tomorrow morning and then visit him in prison." Ian Zhorong was dumbfounded. He never expected things to turn out like this. Speaking of which, who hadn't scolded an official these days? There were even people who scolded the emperor. Scolding an official was a crime. It wasn't a big deal, but it wasn't a small one either. It all depended on the court's judgment. The most serious punishment was 50 strokes of the rod and a month in prison. When he came back to his senses, Ian Zhorong felt angry. He couldn't help but point at Shui Rui and interrogate him. "You didn't go to court to interrogate the case, and you didn't have any evidence to prove my son's crime. Do you know that this is called private punishment? Aren't you afraid that I'll report you to the Imperial Censorate?" Ian Yuanrong turned his head away, not having the heart to continue listening. Shui Rui's expression was solemn. He said, "Lord Ian is too serious. As the Shaoqing of the Supreme Court, I have the authority to order punishment at any time. Tonight, when I saw your son's crime, I interrogated him on the spot. I saw it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. Both the witness and the material evidence are true. Here is a confession. You can take a look at it." As he said this, he took Yin Yuanbua's confession from the table, including the words he used to scold Yushu in Hengwu Mansion and the story of Yushu seducing Yin Yuanrong at Lady Yin's birthday banquet. Shui Rui clearly recorded every word. Halfway through, Yin Zhorong's face turned green. He didn't dare to turn his head to look at Yin Yuanrong's expression. Shui Rui added fuel to the fire. In reality, the person Yin Yuanbua framed was the female celestial commissioner, Yushu. After the Land and Water Conference, she received His Majesty's grace and was conferred the title of Messenger Miao Ling. But she was insulted by your son. It is enough to show contempt for His Majesty's grace. I have already given him a light sentence. Otherwise you, Lord Yin, would not be able to absolve yourself from the blame for his disobedient words and deeds. Who had given Yushu the title? It had been given by the emperor himself. Those who had been immersed in the officialdom for many years could see that Yushu's thunderous reputation was just to correct Emperor Zhao Qing's reputation as a holy ruler. Whoever wanted to ruin her reputation would be going against Emperor Zhao Qing. So Ning Wang had cleverly chosen Yin Yuanbua as a sacrificial pawn. An unremarkable young master of the Yin family, even if he made a big fuss, he could be abandoned at any time. Contempt for His Majesty's grace was a big hat. Yin Zhorong couldn't even take it and immediately became listless. Clutching the confession, he didn't dare to clamor to accuse Shui Rui of dereliction of duty. Yin Yuanrong clicked his tongue. Standing behind his second uncle, he glared at Shui Rui. "Shui Dalong, you've gone too far." Shui Rui slightly twisted the corners of his mouth at him and his tone eased. "But rest assured, Lord Yin. In my opinion, your son had a momentary slip of the tongue and had no intention of disobedience. I will let it go. But the crime of him framing an official of the imperial court is absolutely true and cannot be shirked." Yin Zhorong had a belly full of anger and nowhere to vent it. He stiffly said to Shui Rui, "I lost my composure just now. Lord Shui, please don't blame me. Since you are handling this case impartially, I have nothing else to say. Farewell." He knew that he wouldn't be able to get a favor from Shui Rui, so he didn't linger and immediately left the Supreme Court to find another way to save Yin Yuanbua. Yin Yuanrong stayed behind. Since Yin Zhorong had left, he couldn't be bothered to put on an act. He mocked and ridiculed Shui Rui. "Lord Shui is truly angered by a beauty. If that you knew that you were willing to offend the Yin family for her, I guarantee that she would be dead set on you and devote herself to you." Shui Rui put away the confession and sneered, "Other than male thieves and female prostitutes, is there nothing good in your mind? Everyone knows that Yushu is my adopted sister, but there are people who are blind enough to target her. You're smart this time and didn't get involved in this mess. Otherwise you'll regret it." Yin Yuanrong angrily said after being looked down on, "I helped you but you're still accusing me. If I had known earlier, I would have admitted to seeing Miss Yu. Let's see how you deal with this." Shui Rui paused and suddenly turned his head to look at him. "What did you say? You've seen her?" He had never heard Yushu mention it, so he originally thought that Yin Yuanbo was just making it up. Could there be more to it? Yin Yuanrong didn't notice that the atmosphere was strange and said, Yin Yuanbo isn't really lying." Yin Yuanbo didn't really lie. "It was my second aunt's birthday that day, and I was dragged out to drink with them. Then Yin Yuanbo tricked me into going to his backyard, where I saw your adopted sister hiding in a side room with disheveled clothes. Later, my second aunt came and everyone wanted to keep the peace so they didn't spread the news. Your adopted sister isn't stupid. It was obvious that my second aunt wanted to matchmake her with Yin Yuanbo, but I ruined her plans. She was right not to make a fuss. TSK, in fact, I didn't see clearly. She just took off her outer clothes and inside." Before he could finish speaking, the wind in front of him moved. Yin Yuanrong reacted quickly and leaned back, but he still couldn't avoid Shui Rui's long fist, which hit his chin. Yin Yuanrong took 2 steps back in pain and tasted blood in his mouth. He held his chin and stared in disbelief at Shui Rui, who had pulled back his fist. "Are you crazy?" Shui Rui clenched his fist. His original target was Yin Yuanrong's eyes, but Yin Yuanrong dodged it. However, after venting his anger with this punch, he didn't vent his anger on Yin Yuanrong. Shaking his hand, he said expressionlessly, "I haven't fought with you for a long time, but your skills have deteriorated to this extent. I really don't know how you became the commander of the Yulin Royal Guards." Facing Shui Rui's unreasonable provocation, Yin Yuanrong was so angry that his teeth chattered. He was careless and misled by Shui Rui, so he shouted, "Nonsense! If you have the guts, don't use underhanded punches. Let's have a fight. I'll beat you until you look for your teeth on the ground and cry for your parents. Shui Rui said indifferently, my father passed away many years ago. Yin Yuanrong was so angry that he lost his temper. I won't lower myself to your level. I'm leaving. Yin Yuanrong left in a huff. At this time Shui Rui showed a gloomy face. Shu didn't tell him that she was bullied at the Yin residence. Was it because he had been too tolerant, making her think that he couldn't be trusted? Even when she was humiliated, he couldn't help her vent her anger? She was his future wife. If he couldn't even protect her, how could he call himself a husband? When Yin Zhorong returned to the mansion, it was already midnight. Yin Deng was still awake and waiting for him in the living room of the front yard. Seeing him enter, she hurried to greet him. Where's Yuanbo? Why didn't he come back with you? Yin Zhorong dismissed the servants, turned around and slapped Yin Deng's face. He scolded her in a low voice. Stupid woman. Yin Deng was stunned. They had been husband and wife for many years and had always treated each other with respect. This was the first time he hit her. Yin Zhorong's angry scolding echoed in her ears. Chapter 701. What had happened in Hengwu Mansion was immediately reported to Prince Ning. When he found out that Shui Rui had suddenly appeared and messed things up, and Yin Yuanbo was brought to the Supreme Court, even though Lu Hao didn't flare up on the spot, the gloominess on his face terrified the scout that came to report to the point his legs went weak. Shui Rui, it's him again. Lu Hao suspected that Shui Rui was sent by the heavens to go against him. Ever since Shui Rui returned to the capital, he had ruined many of his plans. Lu Hao took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. He paced back and forth, and waited until he had calmed down before asking the spy he had sent to Hengwu Mansion to cooperate with Yin Yuanbo. Where is Yin Yuanrong? Where did he go? After official Shui left, young Master Yuanrong left in a hurry. It seems that he went to the assistant minister's Fu to report. Lu Hao furrowed his brows. He was not surprised at Yin Yuanrong's self-preservation. According to his original plan, he would first ruin Yu Shu's reputation and have her be related to Yin Yuanrong. He was 70% sure that he would be able to persuade Yin Yuanrong to ask for an edict to bestow marriage. But now the first step had been disrupted by Shui Rui, and the rest of the plan was for naught. What he had to worry about now was that even if Yin Yuanbo did not dare to betray him, Shui Rui would be able to guess that he was the mastermind behind this. Shui Rui might use this to drive a wedge between him and Yin Yuanrong. In this generation of the Yin family, there were not many outstanding members of the Yuan generation, and Yin Yuanrong was one of the best. As the commander of the left side of the Yulin Royal Guards, he had great potential. Lu Hao would need his help when he seized the throne in the future. However, Yin Yuanrong was dissolute and did not like to be restrained. He was not close to Ning Wangfu and was not warm to his cousin. Lu Hao had a headache for a while, but in the end he still decided to prepare for the worst. He summoned a kamikaze and sent someone to keep an eye on Yin Yuanrong, paying attention to whether he had any private dealings with Shui Rui. As for Yin Yuanbo, who was brought to the Supreme Court, Lu Hao had already forgotten about him. Yu Shu secretly observed Bai Ran for a few days. She found that he was much more mature and steady than his peers, but he didn't have any other flaws. She couldn't determine whether they were the same kind of people. First of all, she asked Nbeikue to deliberately write simplified characters to test Bai Ran. He just patiently corrected Nbeikue and did not show any difference. Moreover, every word and action of his was that of a standard ancient person, without the slightest trace of a modern person. This made her puzzled. She thought of two possibilities. One was that Bai Ran had transmigrated to this world since she was a child. She had accepted more than 10 years of feudal thinking and had been assimilated by this era. The other was that Bai Ran had hidden her strength and had long seen through her origin, so she deliberately pretended to be a fool. To be honest, she was a little disappointed. After thinking for a few days, she was not as excited as she was at the beginning. No matter what the possibility was, she didn't intend to recognize Bai Ran. It was just a psychological comfort. Yu Shu calmed down and put aside the matter of Bai Ran. She only told Nbeikue to keep an eye on him and report to him once he found anything unusual. She had always been very vigilant. Bai Ran's identity was a mystery. Before figuring it out, it was better to keep an eye on him. With such an interruption, she didn't pay attention to other things. So when the rumors outside reached her ears, it was already 3 days after the incident in Hengwu building. That morning, she went to the Celestial Commissioner's roll call as usual. On the way she met several colleagues and greeted them politely. However, she found that they seemed to avoid her. Usually they couldn't wait to talk to her, but today they couldn't wait to take a detour when they saw her. What happened? After entering the Kunling bureau, several subordinates also avoided her. They all pretended to be busy so she couldn't find anyone to ask. Only Wen Xiao and acted as usual. Xiao, and what's going on with them? Yushu asked him. Wen Xiao and shook his head. He was also confused. I asked but no one was willing to tell me. Yushu was even more suspicious. She called Su Qing in and told him, go out for a walk and see if anyone in the prison said anything bad about me. Yushu's first reaction was that Shui Yun was up to something again. However, when Su Qing came back at noon, she found out that the matter was more serious than she had imagined. Su Qing stammered at first, but when she slammed the table, he obediently told her, everyone is secretly spreading rumors that there is a young master of the Yin family who was arrested by the Supreme Court's Lord Shui because he insulted you in public. Yushu thought for a moment. She only knew 2 young masters of the Yin family. One was Yin Yuanbua of the Assistant Minister's mansion, and the other was Yin Yuanrong of the Prime Minister's mansion. The one who did this kind of thing was most likely Yin Deng's baby son Yin Yuanbua. What did he scold me about? How did Shui Rui get involved? Yushu felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, Su Qing carefully looked at her face and said, that person made up a rumor that you coveted the power of the Yin family and schemed to seduce 3rd young master Yin Yuanrong. Unfortunately, someone saw it and failed. In fact, the original words were even worse. For example, Lord Yu of the Kunling Bureau took off her clothes to seduce 3rd young master Yin. Su Qing just didn't have the guts to do it. Even so, Yushu was still annoyed after hearing it. She immediately cursed in a low voice. When Xiaoan, who was close to her, heard it clearly, son of AB****, she immediately put Yin Deng and Yin Yuanbua in her shoes. When Xiaoan wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know where to start. As a subordinate of Yushu, he naturally had to stand together against the enemy when she was humiliated. Moreover, slandering a woman's reputation was really something that only a beast would do. Darren, please calm down. He squeezed out a sentence dryly, since that guy has been arrested by Lord Shui, everyone must know that you are innocent. Those rumors are all false. Yushu weakly waved her hand at him, indicating that he should go about his business and not care about her. When Xiao and didn't know the cause and effect at all. She and Yin Yuanbua only met once and didn't even talk to each other, but he ran out to publicize her disgrace. It was obvious that he was instigated by someone. Yushu first suspected that Yin Deng was retaliating against her, but then she felt that it was unlikely. If she wanted to complain, she would have done it long ago. Why wait until so long after the incident? So who would want to use this to ruin her reputation? Yushu knew that if she went to ask Shui Rui, there would be an answer. But as soon as she thought that Shui Rui knew her experience in the Yin family, she felt uncomfortable all over. She felt a little guilty and embarrassed. In short, she couldn't bring herself to look for Shui Rui and ask him about this right now. Besides, it had been 3 days since the incident, but Shui Rui didn't come to see her. Maybe he was angry and didn't want to see her? Thinking of this, Yushu instantly gave up the idea of asking Shui Rui. When Xiaoan saw that she was sitting there in a daze as if she was meditating, he couldn't help but remind her, Darren, it's time for lunch. Do you want to eat here or go outside? Oh, let's eat here, Yushu said casually. Then she stopped when Xiaoan before he went out to ask someone to bring the lunch box. Wait. Yushu stood up, thought for a moment and said, Xiaoan, go to the Astronomy Bureau and see if Lord Shui is there. If he is there, tell him that I will treat him tonight and ask him to do me the honor. This Lord Shui was Chui Xian's biological father, the fool who owed her 60,000 taels of gambling. When Xiaoan didn't understand but he still obeyed. Chui Xiu was alone in the Astronomy Bureau. When he heard that Yushu wanted to treat him to dinner, he didn't feel happy at all. Instead, he agreed with a bitter face. He hadn't collected 60,000 taels of silver yet. He was afraid that Yushu would come to him to force him to pay the debt. He was so worried. In the afternoon, the Great Tipping Point sent someone to inform Yushu to go to Taishi Tower the day after tomorrow. She had been in office for 3 months and she had to take the first assessment. After passing, she could go to the court to participate in politics, attend the civil and military officials, and have the right to advise the emperor. At the same time, Shui Yun, who was in the Taiching office, also received a notice that she would attend Yushu's assessment tomorrow. Sitting in a wheelchair, she couldn't stop laughing. She immediately called one of her subordinates and asked him to sort out the records of Yu Shu's words and deeds these days as soon as possible and show it to her. The official registrar was also a smart person. He saw Shui Yun's intentions, so he came over and doubted her. I'm afraid that these are not enough to refute Darren Yu. Shui Yun looked at him with a smile and said, how do you know that I only have this much confidence? In order to prevent Yu Shu from using her senior brother again, she would definitely drive him out of the Celestial Commissioner. In the fourth watch period, the princess's residence was quiet. On the garden corridor, occasionally, a group of patrolling guards would pass by and scare away the wild cats. Within the upheaval pavilion, Jing Chen was startled awake from his dream with a body drenched in cold sweat. After he woke up, he only felt a splitting headache and his heart beat like a drum. The scenes in his dream were like a fleeting view of flowers on horseback, swiftly flashing through his mind. Those scenes seemed familiar yet extremely unfamiliar. The moonlight outside the window penetrated into the room, illuminating his face slightly green. He sat cross-legged in meditation and adjusted his breathing. After a while he calmed down. He guessed that Zhu Qingjua's medicine had worked. He tried to recall the scenes in the dream just now, but it was blurry. He could only piece it together bit by bit. He came to Jianya City alone and waited at the agreed place to take him back to the capital. However, he, who was inexperienced, was secretly drugged by someone else in his food. Then he fainted, and when he woke up again he was in endless pain and had no strength. He was blindfolded and tied up. His body was bumping as if he was locked in a carriage. Then he vaguely heard someone talking outside. A voice said, "Eldest young master, let's rest for a while before continuing our journey." He used the last of his strength to pull off the blindfold and looked out through the gap between the boards of the carriage. The next moment, a person appeared in his field of vision. The memory came to an abrupt end and Jing Chen's head hurt again. He was afraid that he had forgotten, so he hurriedly got out of bed to light the lamp. He didn't even put on his shoes and didn't call anyone in. He strode into the study next door and quickly grinded ink and cut paper. He endured the headache and drew the face that appeared in his mind. He finished it in one go. After he stopped, he took a breath and leaned closer to the lamp to look at the portrait on the paper. Chapter 702. Early the next morning, Jing Chen sent someone to invite Zhu Qingjue. Zhu Qingjue learned that he had dreamt of some scenes last night but did not ask about the content. He only had him describe the discomfort in his body. She took the opportunity to remove a few herbs from the original prescription and gave him a bottle of clear heart pills. "This is a pill I specially refined for you. If you have a dream in the future, take 3 pills when you wake up. It can relieve your headache." "Many thanks." Jing Chen took it and opened it in front of him. He sniffed it. He had some knowledge of medicine and could distinguish the smell of mint and camphor. Before Zhu Qingjue left, she did not forget to tell him, "I will go to the palace to report. His Majesty may summon you to the palace for questioning." After seeing Zhu Qingjue off, Jing Chen returned to his room and took out the portrait he had drawn last night. Looking at it again during the day, he still felt that this person was unfamiliar. If the scene in the dream had not been so real, he would have suspected that this person was a figment of his imagination. After thinking about it, he made another copy of the portrait. Then, without waiting for the emperor to summon him, he went to the palace to present this portrait. With Zhu Qingjue there, he could not hide it from Emperor Zhaoqing. Furthermore, he sensed that Emperor Zhaoqing was impatient. If there was no progress, it was hard to guarantee that he would not turn to Yu Shu. As soon as Zhu Qingjue left Qingming Hall, Jing Chen entered the palace. Emperor Zhaoqing listened to Jing Chen describe the scene in his dream and saw him draw a portrait. He was clearly very happy and did not force Jing Chen to stay in the palace. He let him go that day. Then he urgently ordered someone to bring him to the palace so that they could discuss what to do next. It was still early after Jing Chen left the palace. He did not return to the Princess Manor but instead went to Yu Shu's manor on Baochang Street. It was dusk and the sun was setting. There were a few sedans and carriages parked outside the gate. Jing Chen dismounted and walked. As soon as he arrived at the gate, he saw a servant blocking the gate. He waved an invitation in his hand and smiled obsequiously at an old man at the gate. "Old uncle, our master has already come 3 times. Please make an exception. Even if you don't want to accept our gifts, please pass on a message. No matter if it's tomorrow or the day after, as long as our master can see official you can take this bit of money to drink." Another servant looked at him in disdain. "You've only been here 3 times. My master has been waiting every day at this hour for half a month, and he hasn't even seen you. You better wait at the back." Due to the commotion in front of the door, the imperial bodyguard from the princess's estate quickened his pace and ran in front of Jing Chen to call for him. Just as he opened his mouth to ask, "Is official Yu in the estate?" he was pushed aside by several people in front of him. "First come, first served. Do you know the rules?" The servant's face darkened. He grabbed the saber at his waist and scolded in a deep voice, "How dare you? The right commander is here. Get out of the way." The servant was startled by him and turned his head in a daze. He saw Jing Chen behind him. Although they didn't recognize him, they could tell from his clothes that he was of noble status. They reacted in time and spread out to the sides. Jing Chen frowned slightly and passed them. Before the servant could speak again, he said to the old man at the gate, "Please inform the master that Jing Chen has come to see him." Coincidentally, the gatekeeper recognized Jing Chen. Previously, when the new residence was under renovation, Jing Chen had followed Yushu here once and finally entered the door. Thus, he did not treat him the same way and politely nodded and said, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Sir, please wait a moment." After that, he called for a servant boy at the gate and asked him to go inside to pass the message. Yushu had a rest today and stayed at home for the whole day. She said that she would not see guests. Tomorrow was the day of her evaluation, so she had to make some preparations. She was quite surprised to hear that Jing Chen was here. She also had something to say to Jing Chen, so she asked XNR to go out and pick him up. She didn't lead him to the living room or the flower hall, but directly to the north wing. Jing Chen waited outside the door for more than a minute before someone came out to lead the way. XNR took him to the shortcut and passed through the big garden. It was the first time that Jing Chen came here after the renovation of the residence. The previous time didn't count. Yushu didn't invite him to the wedding banquet. At this time, walking in the garden, his eyes were filled with green mountains and clear waters. The beautiful grass was fragrant and beautiful. Occasionally, a pair of white cranes would glide over his head and sing happily, making him feel relaxed and happy. Although Jing Chen had something on his mind, he couldn't help but be touched by the plants and animals in the garden. He recalled his time in the mountains. When he saw Yushu, he praised, "The garden is very beautiful." Yushu temporarily forgot about the entanglement and said proudly, "Of course, I have tried my best to clean it up. How can it not be beautiful?" Seeing that she was happy, Jing Chen thought about it and praised again, "Excellent feng shui." Yushu smiled and said, "Then I have to thank my master." Jing Chen wanted to chat with her for a bit, but he couldn't find the right topic. He tried a few times to no avail, so he could only talk about business with her. Not long ago, the emperor appointed the Imperial Hospital's drug judge, Zhu Qingjue, to treat me. I drank his medicine and had a dream last night. I dreamed that I was plotted against in Jianya City. Yushu had dismissed the others when he came in. Hearing this, she was very surprised and asked him hurriedly, "You remember everything?" Jing Chen shook his head, "No, I just remember some fragments such as how I fell into the hands of others." As he said this, he told her the story of him wandering in Jianya City and being drugged in his food. When I woke up from my coma, it seemed that I was imprisoned in a carriage. At that time, I had probably been buried by silver needles in my acupoints, so I lost all my martial strength and couldn't escape. But I heard someone talking outside and I saw a person's appearance through the crack of the door. Who was it? Yushu lowered her voice. She was a little nervous and excited. If the person Jing Chen saw was Duke Xiang, then it would confirm their previous suspicions of Duke Xiang. At the same time, they would be able to confirm the person who wanted to kill her. I don't know. Yushu let out a breath and asked again, "And then?" "Nothing, then I woke up." "That's it?" Yushu was disappointed. "I drew that person's appearance. Do you want to see?" Yushu's eyes suddenly lit up. "Let me see. With a portrait it would be much easier." When the time came, with the imperial notice, criminals would be listed all over the world, and they would be able to find this group of thieves. Jing Chen took out the portrait that he had copied earlier. Before he could open the four corners, Yushu stretched out her hand and pulled it over. As she shook it off, she said, "Didn't you hear their conversation?" "What did they say?" Then she looked down at the portrait on the paper. At first glance, she felt that it was a little familiar. Jing Chen's painting was not abstract, not as vivid as modern sketches, but it was more realistic. In addition, this person had a very unique appearance. If someone knew him, they would definitely associate Jing Chen's portrait with a real person. "Tieske, it seems like I've seen it somewhere before," she muttered to herself. Then she heard Jing Chen whisper, "Young master, let's rest for a while before continuing." "What?" "It's what the person in the painting said." He said, "Young master, let's rest for a while before continuing." Yu Shu was stunned. Something flashed in her mind. She brought the portrait closer to her face and stared at the face. Slowly, her eyes widened, and there was a scream in her heart. "It's him, how could it be him?" Jing Chen saw that her eyes were about to pop out, so he asked, "Do you know him?" "I don't know him," Yu Shu blurted out. Afraid that Jing Chen would suspect something, she quickly added, "He looks a little familiar, but I can't remember where I've seen him." Jing Chen said, "It doesn't matter. I've already presented this portrait to the emperor. I believe he will soon send someone to find this person's whereabouts." Yu Shu was speechless. "You gave the portrait to the emperor?" "Yes." Jing Chen saw that her expression wasn't right. He thought that this wasn't appropriate, so he explained to her, "Zhu Qingjue of the Imperial Hospital knows my body like the back of his hand. He went to the palace to report, so I couldn't hide it even if I wanted to. With this portrait, the emperor won't think of making things difficult for you for a while." Yu Shu squeezed out a smile and said to him, "Thank you for thinking of me. Do you still have any use for this portrait? Can you leave it for me?" It was rare for Jing Chen to get a good expression from her. Not to mention one portrait, even if she asked him to draw 100 more, he would be willing. "You keep it. It's fine as long as you don't lose it." With the portrait in hand, Yu Shu immediately stood up to send him off. "Tomorrow is my assessment. I'm not ready yet. You can go back." She originally wanted to say something to him, but she didn't have the mood to do so now. She called for a maid to send Jing Chen away. Yu Shu closed the door and turned her head with a heavy expression. She held the portrait that Jing Chen left behind and looked at it several times. Finally, she confirmed that she didn't recognize the wrong person. She had seen this person before. If she remembered correctly, he was a steward in Prime Minister Shui's mansion. His surname was Su. In May of last year in Yang City, she was still a worthless burden. The Ji family caught Yu Xiaoxiu to threaten her. They used her fate as an excuse. They wanted her to replace Ji Xingxuan, who had a precious fate, to marry the eldest young master of the Shui family. The Shui family sent people from the capital to the physiognomy, and the leader was this Governor Su. If it weren't for the words "eldest young master" that Jing Chen learned, she wouldn't have remembered who this person was. Yu Shu anxiously walked back and forth in the room. She calculated the time. When Jing Chen was killed in the south, this Governor Su stayed in the south. It just matched. In that case, the person who inserted the silver needles into Jing Chen's acupoints and the person who went to the River of Abandonment was the Shui clan's chief steward. It could be imagined who had instructed him to do so. Could it be that the Shui clan wanted to rebel? What to do? What to do? Jing Chen has handed the portrait to the emperor. They can't get it back even if they want to. Once they arrest people, the Shui family will be the first to bear the brunt. Wouldn't Shui Rui suffer a calamity? Yu Shu's heart burned with anxiety, and she utterly didn't have the mood to doubt if Shui Rui would be on the same side as the thief that poisoned Jing Chen. "Miss Dinner is here." "Where is it?" Yundo knocked on the door. Yu Shu woke up with a start. She hastily folded the portrait and put it in her arms. She opened the door and strode out. "I want to go out. Ask someone to bring my horse." No, she had to inform Shui Rui as soon as possible. She couldn't let him sit and wait for death. This was a heinous crime related to rebellion. Once the emperor found out that it was related to the Shui family, he would not be lenient. Yu Shu could almost foresee that this portrait would bring an unprecedented disaster to the Shui family, who had great power in the court. Chapter 703. At this time, Yu Shu didn't know where Shui Rui was, so she took Lu Hong and Su Qing to the Prime Minister's estate first. When she found out that Shui Rui hadn't returned home, she went to Wangji restaurant. However, she didn't find him. Finally, she went to the Supreme Court to look for him. It was already late, and the front door of the Supreme Court's yamen was tightly closed. Yu Shu walked through the side door and met two guards. She asked them, "Has official Shui passed by Shui Rui?" The two guards didn't know because they had just changed shifts. "Can you let me go in to look for him?" The guard shook his head. "It's already past the hour of the rooster. The Supreme Court doesn't allow outsiders to enter." No matter how much Yu Shu tried to persuade them, they refused to bend the rules. At this time, a person walked out of the door. When he saw Yu Shu, he made a sound of surprise and took the initiative to greet her. "Isn't this Miss Yu?" Yu Shu saw that it was a middle-aged official who looked somewhat familiar, so she politely asked, "This is Official Shui and I are colleagues. My surname is Li." Official Li introduced himself with a smile. Yushu didn't know where to find Shui Rui's whereabouts, so she hurriedly said, "So it's official, Li. My apologies for not recognizing you. I'm here to look for my sworn brother. Did you see him today?" Official Li moved her to the side to talk. "You came at a bad time. Official Shui went out on official business this morning. He won't be back for at least 5 days." When Yushu heard this, she became anxious. "Where did he go?" "He went to Fenghua Manor. Do you have an urgent matter to discuss with him?" Official Li was good at reading people's expressions. Seeing the situation, he helped her come up with an idea. "If we can't wait for him to come back, we'll use the official road to chase him away. If they're in a carriage, you can send people to chase after them on horseback. If they're fast, we'll be able to catch up with him in a day." Yushu was very worried. Tomorrow was the day of her evaluation. If she went to chase after Shui Rui now, she would not be able to come back in time. Moreover, Jing Chen had presented the portrait to the emperor, and it had not happened yet. If she went to look for Shui Rui with such great fanfare, wouldn't she be exposing herself? She was extremely regretful. If she had known this would happen yesterday, she wouldn't have made a fuss and didn't dare to see him. "Thank you, Master Li. I'm not in a hurry. Let's wait for him to come back." "You're welcome." The more Official Li looked at Yushu, the more satisfied he was. He thought that when official Shui returned, he might as well mention his younger brother to his face and see if he could ask him to be a matchmaker. When Yushu returned to the manor, the first thing she did was to summon Song Dali. Both Zhou Hu and Song Dali were martial artists that she bought from the supply house. Because the former was meticulous in his work, she arranged for him to be a steward in the front yard, while the latter became the head of the patrolling guards. She wanted to send someone to inform Shui Rui. If Lu Hong and Su Qing went, it would be too conspicuous. Song Dali was her servant, so he did not lack loyalty. "Tomorrow morning, as soon as the city gate opens, go out of the city and look for my sworn brother Shui Rui at the Fenghua Manor. Bring him a message from me. Say Sir Yinya's youngest son has drawn a portrait and handed it over to his uncle." This matter was of great importance. Yushu did not write a letter, nor would she divulge a single word of it to anyone else. Hence, she believed that with Shui Rui's quick-wittedness, he would definitely be able to understand what she meant. Yushu had Song Dali repeat it 3 times for her. After confirming that there were no mistakes, she asked Yun Do to weigh out 1.5 taels of silver and gave it to him. She also brought him to the stables to meet Little Red. Tomorrow before dawn he would wake up to lead the horses. Horses were luxury goods. Any one of them would cost hundreds of taels of silver, not to mention the cost of taming them. After Yushu set up her own business, she bought 2 good horses through Pei Jing's channels. But when it came to leg strength and endurance, Little Red, whom Pei Jing had carefully selected for her, was still the best. Even with such arrangements in place, Yushu still could not rest assured. She tossed and turned all night until dawn. She only fell asleep when she heard that Song Dali had left. After getting up early and bathing, Yushu changed into the newly tailored autumn clothes sent by the secretariat. The clothes were made of silk and the embroidery women's exquisite needlework outlined the 2 iris petals on her shoulders. She tied her hair up and wore a crown. She slightly drew on her eyebrows and tail. Her slender figure had an androgynous heroic spirit, which made Xener and Liner, who were helping her with her makeup, flustered and blushed. At 6:45 in the morning, Yushu arrived at the Celestial Commissioner's office. She did not go to the Kunling Bureau. Instead, she sent Lu Hong and Su Qing to Taishi Tower. She originally thought that she had arrived early, but she did not expect that she would not be the first to arrive. It seemed that there was someone looking forward to her assessment more than her. In the empty hall, Yushu saw Shui Yin sitting in a wheelchair. She was not surprised at all. If she was in a good mood, she might tease her. Unfortunately, she was not in a good mood today, so she did not have the patience to play games with her. "Official Yu, please sit. It's not the hour yet. The head supervisor and the other officials have not arrived yet. You don't have to be nervous." Shui Yun said sarcastically with a friendly face. "It's okay. My legs are good, so I don't feel tired standing." Yushu also responded politely. There were a few chairs placed on the left and right sides of the hall. Besides Shui Yun's seat, she sat on the second seat on the right. There were 2 empty seats on the left and right. It seemed that there were 6 officials participating in Yushu's assessment. Of these 6 seats, 2 were from the Taiching Bureau, 2 were from other departments, and the last 2 were officials from the Kunling Bureau where Yushu worked. According to the rules, in order to show fairness, except for the people from the Taiching Bureau, The other 4 were personally appointed by the head supervisor. They were only notified 1 day in advance. Yushu did not know who these people were in advance, so she did not want her colleagues to protect each other. Yushu and Shui Yun did not pay attention to each other and waited awkwardly for half an incense stick to burn. People arrived one after another. First, it was Chao Zuoling, the chief official of the Taiching Bureau, and a recorder from the Secretariat. Then it was Jing Qin from the Kunling Bureau, followed by Yushu's subordinate, Xiaolan. Finally, it was the adjutant of the Bureau of Astronomy, Cui Shui. Now that all 6 people were present, someone was sent upstairs to invite the head supervisor to take his seat. Only then did the assessment officially begin. Today's assessment was presided over by the head supervisor. When he came up, he first asked someone to bring a chair for Yushu to sit down. He pointed at her and said to the 2 sides, "Since ancient times, heroes have been born from youth. When I was her age, I was still studying in the Taisha library." The people below laughed. He was as kind as an elder and asked Yushu with concern, "Don't be too reserved. You didn't sleep well last night, right?" Yushu knew that the head supervisor had a cheat code and did not dare to talk nonsense in front of him. She smiled shyly and said, "I was a little worried." The head supervisor nodded knowingly and did not say anything else. But with these 2 sentences, anyone with a discerning eye could see that he was very satisfied with Yushu as a female imperial official. He sat on the steps with a screen behind him and a 6-legged turtle table in front of him. There was a thin scroll by his hand. He glanced at it and read, "Yushu from Yiyang in Jiangnan. 17 years old. Year of Zhaoqing 13th year of Diyan examination. 2 roll 3rd grade Jiazi 4th grade Yisher. In July 14th year of Zhaoqing 14th year, she was appointed as the female imperial official of the Kunling Bureau of Celestial Commissioner. She has been in office for 3 months. During this period, if there is any dereliction of duty, abuse of power for personal gain or other incompetent conduct, everyone present must report it truthfully and not cover it up." After he finished reading, he pushed the scroll to the side and clasped his hands together. He looked at the people below and nodded. "What do you all have to say? Who will speak first?" The 6 officials who participated in the assessment looked at each other, but no one made a sound. Chapter 704. Chao Zuoling didn't have any opinions about Yushu. As the 3rd in command of the Celestial Commissioner, he almost never went against the most important person. Since official Yu took office, she has been impartial and disciplined. She also defended the dignity of our Celestial Commissioner at the Land and Water Conference. Although she is young, she is diligent and ambitious. I think she is qualified to be the Empress of the Kunling Bureau. For this evaluation, I will give her an A grade. Of the 6 people present today, everyone could give Yushu a judgment. A was excellent, B was qualified, C was dereliction of duty, and D was malfeasance. If all 6 people were A or B, then they passed the evaluation and Yushu was qualified to go to court. If 2 or more people judged her dereliction of duty, then she did not pass the evaluation and would be detained for a month before being dealt with. If 1 or more people judged her dereliction of duty, then she also did not pass the evaluation. Moreover, once all malfeasance was verified, she would be dismissed from her post and dealt with severely. After Chao Zuoling finished speaking, he smiled at Yushu. Yushu understood and nodded in thanks. With Chao Zuoling making a good start, the people behind him took the initiative. First, Jing Qin gave her an A grade, Xiaolan gave her an A grade, then the records department gave her a B grade and Cui Shui gave her an A grade. In this way Yushu had 4 A grades and 1 B grades. Only Shui Yin didn't speak. Even if she gave her a C grade, it wouldn't stop Yushu from passing the evaluation. Yushu calculated for a moment and raised an eyebrow at Shui Yun with a somewhat provocative smile. As if in response to her provocation, Shui Yun cleared her throat. Her soft voice was mixed with a sickly delicacy. "I haven't been at the Celestial Commissioner for a long time, but I do know official Yu. Therefore today she is judged to be a D grade and I want to report her dereliction of duty." The originally harmonious scene was completely destroyed by a single sentence from her. Yushu was originally sitting in a chair, but when she finished speaking, she consciously stood up. The people present looked at each other, obviously very surprised. As Shui Yun's superior, Chao Zuoling didn't expect her to go against him without a word. He shouted with an unhappy expression, "Young official Shui?" Shui Yun ignored him and reported to the chief supervisor, "I want to report the female official of the Kunling Bureau for 5 counts of dereliction of duty. First, she overstepped her authority. Second, she neglected her duties. Third, she accepted bribes. Fourth, she colluded with unscrupulous merchants to accumulate wealth. Fifth, she misconduct and disgraced the official's reputation. With these 5 counts added together, Yu Shu wouldn't be able to keep her official position and would be sent to prison. Jing Qin furrowed his brows. Facing such an unreasonable Shui Yun, his tolerance had long been exhausted. Thus, without waiting for De Qiao to ask, he coldly questioned Shui Yun. Jing Qin frowned. Facing such an unreasonable Shui Yun, his tolerance had long been exhausted. Thus, he didn't wait for the chief supervisor to ask and coldly questioned Shui Yun. Shui Yun looked at him. Her heart ached because he was defending Yu Shu and criticizing her, so she put on a stern face and said, "As far as I know, the Right Commander Darren is not in the Imperial Astronomer for more than half of every month. How can you guarantee that she has not committed any malfeasance? You deliberately cover for her, so of course you won't allow me to speak the truth." She stubbornly looked at Jing Qin and aggressively said, "Although you are temporarily acting as the right official, you don't restrict your subordinates. You don't care about the matters of the Kunling Bureau and official you overstepped her authority. Do you think you don't have any responsibility?" In terms of eloquence, how could Jing Qin be her opponent? With just a few words she had smeared his name and defeated him. Official Xiaoqing, Xiaolan stood up. Although his official position wasn't high, he was older than Shui Yun, so he wasn't afraid of a little girl like her. With a dissatisfied expression he said, "This official has been a small official in the Kunling Bureau for 8 years and has never been late for the daily roll call. I should be able to guarantee that what I said is the truth. Official Yu has never neglected her duties. As for what you said about her overstepping her authority, that's even more untrue. Official Yu has never acted arbitrarily in the official affairs of the Bureau. I don't know how you know that she has overstepped her authority. Yu Shu was a good person in the Kunling Bureau. She didn't make things difficult for her subordinates and didn't shirk her responsibilities. She did all the things that she should do and did all the things that she shouldn't do. She wasn't from an aristocratic family and had a peaceful relationship with the chief. The two of them didn't have to divide their factions, so the subordinates didn't have to fight with each other. Compared to the previous chaotic situation of the Kunling Bureau, the current orderly days were all thanks to the arrival of Yu Shu. Yu Shu looked at Xiaolan in surprise. She didn't expect him to speak up for her. Is that so? Then I'll list some evidence to convince you. Shui Yun tilted her head and the attendant behind her, who was supporting the wheelchair, took out a silk booklet and spread it on her lap. She looked at the records on the booklet and described in detail that on a certain day of a certain month, Yu Shu hid in the inner room to sleep after the roll call. On a certain day of a certain month, she left early. On another certain day of a certain month, she wandered in the Celestial Commissioner's garden. Even the smallest of sesame seeds were recorded by her, which made people speechless. The above are all instances where official Yu neglected her duties. In addition, before I came, the Taiqing Bureau had another record of official Yu. In September, the female imperial official sent someone with a seal to the Taiqing Bureau to borrow servants to clean the Kunling Bureau's library. As she spoke, she didn't look at Yu Shu and instead asked Xiaolan, "You've been an official in the Directorate of Astrology for 8 years. Don't tell me that you don't remember that there's a round of cleaning every 3 months? It's an inventory of all the stacks and confidential files of the various departments and bureaus. It should be personally presided over by the chief official. According to my investigation, the right commander wasn't in the prison during those days, so it was official Yu who made the decision to preside over the cleaning. Tell me if this is true." Xiaolan didn't expect her to be so crafty and was speechless for a moment. Shui Yun sneered, "You have nothing to say, right? This is clearly overstepping your authority." Lord Xiaoqing is twisting words and forcing logic. This lowly official has nothing to say. Xiaolan sat back with a stern face and turned to look at Yu Shu apologetically. "I didn't do my duty. How can it be blamed on her? Don't pester me endlessly." Jing Qin spoke again, warning Shui Yun with his eyes not to go too far. Shui Yun saw it but pretended not to see it. She blindly said, "Today is the assessment of the female imperial official. The right commander's dereliction of duty is another matter." Several people present argued about whether Yu Shu was derelict of duty. Yu Shu looked at the two sides arguing back and forth. Shui Yun was 1 against 3, but the great commander was unmoved. This scene reminded her of the court in the future. She was the defendant, and the great commander was the judge who ruled everything. Jing Qin and Xiaolan were her defense lawyers, while Shui Yun bravely took on the roles of the plaintiff, the prosecution, and the prosecutor, fighting on the front line to bring her down. As soon as Yu Shu laughed, everyone realized that they had ignored her for a long time. Pairs of eyes were fixed on her. She touched the tip of her nose awkwardly and said to Shui Yun with an innocent expression, "Why is Lord Shui looking at me? Didn't you list 5 crimes against me?" "I'm listening. You've only said 2. What about the rest?" Shui Yun squinted at her and turned to the great commander. "I passed by Lord Yu's official residence several times and saw a line of people waiting to send gifts outside. After asking around, I found out that Lord Yu deliberately didn't approve the marriage invitation. She only issued the official marriage document after giving her a generous gift. This is a bribe. There's a treasure house on Qinyuan Street that sells rare treasures. Among them there's a type of gemstone called crystal. The raw stone is just a cheap type of water essence stone. Many people have heard of this matter. In order to find out the truth, I specially went there to inquire about the price. In the end, I spent 7,000 taels of silver and only bought 2 small items. Lord, you can take a look and see if it's real or not. I've received it here." As she spoke, the attendant behind her took out another box and opened it. Inside were 2 bracelets, one white and one yellow. There was also a written receipt to show that the items had been received. She had someone present these items in front of the great commander. Her eyes turned to Yu Shu and the corners of her mouth twitched. She said mockingly, "As for the last item, it's not groundless for me to accuse her of misconduct. These days there are rumors about Lord Yu everywhere in the Celestial Commissioner's office. It said that she once seduced a man naked in someone's house and was seen by many people. I didn't verify this, so I want to ask Lord Yu in person, have you ever done such a shameless thing?" If Shui Yun's previous 4 statements were all based on evidence, then the last one was a blatant slap in the face. Other than Yu Shu and Shui Yun, everyone here was an adult man. When they heard her description, they all felt extremely embarrassed. Some shook their heads and some frowned. Although Yu Shu had long been prepared that Shui Yun would use this as a pretext to make a fuss, she still couldn't help but get angry when she heard Shui Yun bring up that matter maliciously. If it weren't for her assessment today, if there weren't these people present, she couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't be rough and beat a disabled person. "Shui Yun." Jing Qin scolded in a deep voice. He never thought that Shui Yun would embarrass Yu Shu in such a despicable way. Shui Yun didn't seem to hear Jing Qin calling her. She stared straight at Yu Shu, and a sickly blush appeared on her face. She asked in a low voice, "Have you ever done such a shameless thing? Have you?" Yu Shu held back her anger, but her face was hazy. Her tightly pursed lips made people think that she couldn't stand the humiliation and would explode on the spot. However, Yu Shu just stared at Shui Yun coldly for a moment. Then she turned back to the great commander and bowed to him. She said loudly, "Great commander, please allow me to explain." The great commander listened for a while and knew what was going on. However, he still maintained an impartial attitude and nodded to her. "Speak, don't be anxious. I have my own judgment on whether it's true or false." Yu Shu put down her hand and looked around. With a cold face, she methodically defended herself. Although the right commander didn't personally preside over the cleanup in September, he had already arranged the specific matters beforehand. "I only did as I was told. Because the Kunling Bureau lacked manpower, I sent people to the Taiching Bureau to borrow people. Because of this, Vice Minister Shui said that I exceeded my authority. This is really far-fetched. Do we need the chief to personally watch us before we can do work? Then I'm afraid he needs to grow a few more pairs of eyes. As an adjutant, it's my duty to assist the chief. What did I do wrong?" The great commander glanced at Shui Yun and immediately judged. "You said that you exceeded your authority. It's an exaggeration." Shui Yun had calmed down after the previous wave of excitement. Naturally, she wouldn't be so impulsive as to argue with the great commander. Yu Shu discovered that the great commander was biased towards her and boldly continued, "Saying that I neglected my duties is complete nonsense. The 3 departments and 2 bureaus each have their own duties. Ever since I became a female imperial official, I have strictly adhered to the Kunling Bureau's rules and regulations. As for the trivial matters listed by Vice Minister Shui, if every one of them is considered a neglect of duty, then there wouldn't be a single person in the entire Celestial Commissioner Bureau who is loyal to their duties. The great commander can ask the officials here, who hasn't left early due to an urgent matter, who hasn't wandered around the prison." Hearing this, the great commander actually laughed. He waved his hand and said, "Not to mention them, even I have. This can be excluded." Below, Chao Zuoling and the others let out a sigh of relief and secretly scolded Shui Yun for looking for trouble. They were here to be officials, not to go to prison. Who needed a ruler to measure people? If Yu Shu was really accused of neglecting her duties, then they wouldn't have an easy time in the future. Yu Shu glanced at Shui Yun from the corner of her eyes. She saw that Shui Yun's hands were tightly clenched and her lips were pursed in silence. She laughed at Shui Yun's naivety. She had only been in the officialdom for a few days, so how could she see the depths of the water? Besides, if you accuse me of accepting bribes, then it's even more unjust. Vice Minister Shui only thinks that those people came to give me gifts, but they didn't ask me whether I accepted the gifts or not. I can only say that their legs are on them, so I can't control them from giving gifts. My hands are on me, so I can control myself and not stretch out my hands. Yu Shu said these words with great confidence. Shui Yun probably didn't expect that she had never accepted a single copper coin as a bribe since she took office. Chao Zuoling had endured Shui Yun for a long time, but now he finally found an opportunity to interject. He said to Shui Yun, who was sitting next to him in a bad mood, "You're a new official, so you don't know the procedures. If you want to accuse official Yu of accepting bribes, you can't just say it out loud. You need to collect witnesses and material evidence, and the briber can testify on the spot. Do you have all of these?" Of course Shui Yun didn't have any. She had also tried to persuade the people who had sent gifts to Yu Shu's residence to testify, but they were unwilling. They just complained a little in front of her and complained a little. Just as Zuoling said, there are no witnesses, so it can't be counted. Chao Zuoling once again rejected Shui Yun. Yu Shu bowed to Chao Zuoling and thanked him. "Thank you, official Chao, for speaking up for justice." Then she lamented about her colluding with unscrupulous merchants. "The head steward of the treasure house is my own uncle. I partnered with him to make a living and it was all legitimate business. Both of us were willing, so how can it be described as collusion? Young official Shui always thinks the worst of people, so I can't do anything about it. However, according to what you said, anyone who does business with merchants outside can be considered as colluding with unscrupulous merchants. Then doesn't that mean that all 12 families in Anling City have unscrupulous merchants?" Yu Shu unceremoniously dragged the 12 families who opened the Great Exchange Hall into the water. Sure enough, Chao Zuoling and Cui Xiu's faces darkened. They stood up at the same time and bowed to Chao Zuoling. "Imperial Secretary, please understand." Chao Zuoling smiled helplessly. He raised his hand to calm them down and said, "Shui Yun comes from a Taoist sect, so she doesn't know the customs and regulations of the capital. Don't argue with her." It sounded like he was helping Shui Yun, but in reality he had removed one of Yu Shu's charges. Shui Yun finally lost her cool and said loudly, "All of you are helping her exonerate her. Even though I have concrete evidence, I turn a blind eye to it." She was referring to the 2 crystal bracelets in the box and the receipt of 7,000 taels of silver. Yu Shu smiled generously and said to her, "If you think it's not worth it, I'll return 7,000 taels of silver to you. It's not like I'm forcing you to buy or sell, so what evidence is there to talk about?" Shui Yun's 10 fingers were in pain. Looking at Yu Shu's smug expression, she hated herself for not being as cunning as her. She snorted coldly and slightly raised her chin. Her voice suddenly became sharp. "Then why don't you tell me how the rumor of you seducing men while naked came about?" Hearing this, Yu Shu looked around and her eyes fell on the tea table next to Chao Zuoling. She stepped forward and grabbed the tea that was still warm beside his hand. Under everyone's stunned gaze, she suddenly splashed the tea on Shui Yun's face. She looked down at her younger apprentice sister whose legs were crippled and whose mind was also twisted. She sneered. Chapter 705. It's because of shameless people like you that there are rumors and swords that kill people. Yu Shu raised her cup and splashed it. Shui Yun didn't have time to turn her head to avoid it. Half of the warm tea splashed on her face, and some of it splashed into her eyelids. She quickly closed her eyes. The burning pain made her raise her hand to rub her eyes in panic. However, the powder on her eyebrows was ruined, and there was a bruise on her face. It was as if she was punched in the eye. It was quite funny. My eyes, senior brother, senior brother." The more Shui Yun rubbed her eyes, the more painful it became. She couldn't open her eyes. She helplessly called out to Jing Chen with a hint of crying. Jing Chen was silent for a moment. He suddenly got up, strode forward, and grabbed Shui Yun's wrist to stop her from moving. Then he opened her eyelids and checked. He picked out a small piece of unknown residue from her lower eyelid. "Go get some water." The head teacher was the first to react. He ordered someone to get some water for Shui Yun to wash her eyes. Then he looked at Yushu, who was standing there with a confident face. He sighed and didn't know what to say to her. By the time Shui Yun was able to open her eyes again, her eyeballs had already been rubbed out of shape. It was as if she had a red eye disease. She stared fixedly at Yushu, looking somewhat frightening. How could Yushu be afraid of her? She crossed her arms and looked down at her, saying, "Why are you glaring at me? You're allowed to speak rudely to me, but I'm not allowed to retaliate. I'm a reasonable person. You're just a mountain girl who doesn't care about a woman's reputation. When you meet other chaste girls, you shamelessly say that they should strip you naked and fight you to the death. You still have the face to glare at me?" She was a dignified female immortal of Mount Longhu, but she called her a wild girl who didn't care about chastity. Shui Yun felt extremely humiliated. She was so angry that her voice trembled. She raised her hand and poked her nose. "How dare you insult my Jingyi sect?" Yushu slapped her hand away. She didn't care if she had just regrown her tendons. "Don't play this game with me. When did I mention your sect? I was clearly scolding you, a shameless girl. If you had any sense of shame, you would have found a hole to hide in." Yushu was a person who could turn black into white. She wasn't afraid even if she ignored her, let alone when she was in the right. Shui Yun was acting shamelessly with her. She really didn't know herself. Shui Yun bit her lower lip, her eyes filled with tears of shame and indignation. Looking at the people around her, they all pretended to be deaf and mute, as if they hadn't seen Yushu attack her just now. In her eyes, everyone here had become that person's accomplices. As the beloved daughter of immortal Huai Yun, she had always been the one to bully others. She had never swallowed her pride like this. She blinked her eyes and tears rolled down her cheeks. She pursed her lips and looked up at Jing Chen. "Senior brother, even though she insulted me like this, you still want to protect her, right?" Jing Chen looked tired. These days he saw Shui Yun sink deeper and deeper. She stubbornly did what she thought was right, regardless of whether it would hurt others or not. He still didn't understand why she always targeted Yushu. No matter how he persuaded her, she wouldn't let go. Shui Yun became like this, which made him feel guilty, but he couldn't do anything about it. "I didn't protect anyone. You were the one who was unreasonable. You were wrong first." Yushu, who was at the side, sneered inwardly when she heard his pointless accusation. She had long seen through Jing Chen's cold exterior, soft heart, and indecisiveness. It would be best if she could be friends with him, but if she were to talk about romance with him, she would just be looking for trouble. She was glad that she realized it early. Before she fell in love with him, she had reunited with Shui Rui, who was dead set on her. Otherwise she would have suffered a lot now. Just Shui Yun alone could make her die several times over. To Yushu these words were not painful, but to Shui Yun, it was unbearable. She tightened her jaw and squeezed the words out of her teeth. "Anyway, it doesn't matter what I say. You'd rather believe her sophistry." It was obvious that she insisted on blaming Yushu, and she refused to admit her mistake even in the end. "Let's go." Shui Yun asked her servants to push her away. She didn't care about the director of today's assessment at all, which made the people present unhappy. "You're the only one who dares to speak righteously, and we're all fools who don't know right from wrong?" The director was always calm, not arrogant, and not rash. But Shui Yun's behavior today made him doubt whether his decision to agree to her becoming an official in the Celestial Commissioner was too hasty. Look at how a proper assessment had turned into such a mess. It had actually been used by the girls to fight over it. "Don't be in a hurry to leave." Yushu rushed in front of her and opened her arms to stop her. "You're fine, but I haven't finished speaking." Shui Yun raised her head with red eyes. "Get out of my way." Yushu didn't care about her bluff. She turned to the director and said respectfully, "This lowly official is bold. There are some words that I have to say." The director's eyelids tightened. He knew that what she was going to say was not good, but he couldn't stop her from speaking. He could only nod in approval. Sure enough, as soon as Yushu opened her mouth, it made his teeth hurt. "This lowly official is deeply puzzled about your appointment of Miss Shui Yun as the Shaoqing of the Taiqing Division." Throughout the history of the Celestial Commissioner, there were few officials who didn't come from the great evolution master background. Even if there were, they were all extraordinary people, or they had meritorious service to the imperial court. For example, the Right Commander Darren. He prayed for the people of Da and on behalf of his mother, Princess Liue Royal. He joined the Dao sect when he was young. May I ask the director, Miss Shui Yun is not a great evolution master. What is so special about her that you can make an exception to hire her and jump 5 ranks to become an official of the imperial court? To put it simply, what was Shui Yin based on? Her words reflected the thoughts of Chao Zuoling and the others. In fact, when Shui Yun was promoted to the position of imperial astronomer, it aroused the dissatisfaction of many people. Other people who had studied hard for 10 years might not even be able to touch the threshold of the imperial astronomer. There were also those who had spent many years in low-ranking positions, unable to make a name for themselves. But Shui Yun, a little girl who was not even a teacher of Yishe, easily occupied the position that countless people dreamed of. Who could accept this? Who didn't have resentment? It was just that no one was willing to come forward and argue with the director. Now that Yushu said it, people were not unhappy. Especially Xialan, an ordinary great evolution master who relied on herself to get to where she was now. She almost wanted to stand up and applaud Yushu. The director sighed inwardly and was about to speak, but Shui Yun cut in first. I am a direct disciple of Mount Longhu's Jingyi sect. I've been taught since birth. It's just a great development test. How difficult can it be? I don't want to participate. Only you ordinary people care about fame and fortune and are arrogant. You don't know that any perfected master of Mount Longhu, or even all the great evolution masters of the Celestial Commissioner combined, can't compare. She used a big move to look down on everyone. She attacked indiscriminately, including the director. Yushu opened her mouth. She had a new understanding of Shui Yun's arrogance. Even though she already knew that Shui Yun looked down on ordinary people, she was still shocked by her words. She thought that she was brave enough to stand up and question the director's decision. But compared to Shui Yun, she was nothing. Ignorant child. Chao Zuoling was the first to flip out. He slammed the table and stood up. Xialan and the official from the secretariat also stood up and glared at Shui Yun. They were so angry that their faces and necks were red. They almost rolled up their sleeves to beat her up. Cui Shui was the most direct. He turned around and knelt down in front of the Grand Preceptor, pointing at Shui Yun with a pained expression and shouting, "Such an arrogant person who looks down on all the scholars in the world, how can she be fit to be a member of our imperial astronomer? I beg the Grand Preceptor to retract his order and remove her from her position. Otherwise, the dignity of our imperial astronomer will be completely gone." Yushu turned her head to look and saw the great Tiandi coldly staring ahead. There was no anger or indignation in his calm gaze, but it made one's hair stand on end and a chill run down one's spine. The pitiful Shui Yun didn't turn around. She was laughing foolishly because she had angered everyone. She continued to boast shamelessly, "Don't you think I'm a useless person because I have a broken leg? Let me tell you, I don't want to be a minister of the Celestial Commissioner." As soon as she finished speaking, a voice came from behind her. "It was me who forced you. Since Miss Shui Yun can't bear to be condescended, please leave this place." The director casually said and no longer cared about Shui Yun. He turned to the others and asked Cui Shui to come with him. He then announced, "In today's assessment, the female imperial official of the Kunling Bureau, Yushu, received 4 first and 1 second. She is qualified for her position. Starting from the beginning of next month, she will be given court clothes and will participate in the morning court. Please take care of yourself, be loyal to your duty and be strict with yourself. Don't let down the reputation of the Celestial Commissioner." Yushu reacted very quickly. She immediately bowed and said in a clear voice, "I accept the order. I don't dare to be negligent." Then she stood up and thanked the 5 officials who came to participate in her assessment. Her posture was graceful and her clothes were straight. Just like the rising sun outside the building, she was full of vigor. In contrast to her was Shui Yun, who was sitting in a wheelchair a few steps away. She looked embarrassed and haggard. Her weak body and anxious aura made it difficult for people to approach and hide from her. "Hurry up and leave." Shui Yun couldn't stay any longer. She clenched her weak palms and couldn't bear the humiliation. Her face turned blue and she urged the attendants to push her away. In the eyes of others, it looked like she was fleeing. Others wouldn't pity her. Only Jing Chen looked at her back and sighed softly. Yushu smiled and responded to Chao Zuoling and the others' thanks while looking coldly at Shui Yun's fleeing figure. After the assessment, Yushu and Cui Shui were the last to leave Taishi Tower. The two walked on a small path. When there was no one around, Cui Shui couldn't help but ask Yushu in a low voice, "What grudge does official you have with that Miss Shui Yun? Why does she have to deliberately deal with you?" Yushu walked beside him with her hands crossed. She laughed and said, "Let's not talk about it." Cui Shui saw that she didn't say anything, so he didn't pursue the matter. He sincerely complimented her. Fortunately, you have a good foresight and provoked her into cutting off her own path of retreat. Yu Shu also flattered him. It's all thanks to official Chui's righteous words. Don't worry, I always keep my word. I promise to waive half of your gambling debt, so I won't go back on my word. Come to Wangji Tower tonight and we'll make a new contract. The original 60,000 taels you owe me will become 30,000 taels. Chui Shui secretly shushed her. There was finally a smile on his face, but he felt scared in his heart. The night before, Yu Shu treated him to a meal and had a secret talk with him behind closed doors. She made him promise to act according to her eyes during the assessment. As a result, the Taiching Shaoqing, who had just been appointed, was expelled from the Celestial Commissioner. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.